I know the one thing we did right was the day we started to fight. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on.
Her contribution to America was that she was an ordinary person that did an extraordinary thing.
New tonight, the sister of civil rights pioneer Claudette Colvin speaks about the legacy of her late sister. The family says Claudette Colvin passed away this morning at 86 years old. Colvin was just a teenager when she secured her place in history when she refused to move from her seat on a segregated bus in Montgomery. That was on March 2nd, 1955. And keep in mind, that was 9 months before Rosa Parks made headlines doing the same thing. CBS 42 senior reporter Amy Hybels joins us in studio with how Claudette Colvin's simple act of courage is being remembered tonight. Amy?
Well, Sherry, in addition to talking with Colvin's sister, I also spoke with historian Barry McNeely at the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute, who describes Claudette Colvin as a pioneer.
When she sat on that bus that day, she couldn't have known that there would be a 380-day plus boycott to follow. But she did know at that moment that she expressed her humanity and she demanded that it be respected.
Claudette Colvin was a 15-year-old high school student when she refused to give up her seat on a segregated bus in Montgomery in March of 1955. She became one of 4 black female plaintiffs who filed a lawsuit challenging segregated bus seating in Montgomery. They won the Browder versus Gale U.S. Supreme Court decision in 1956. The landmark lawsuit outlawed racial segregation on Montgomery's buses. Their attorney, Fred Gray, went on to defend Martin Luther King Jr. and Rosa Parks. Colvin's younger sister, Gloria Gadsden Laster, describes her sister's mindset as a 15-year-old.
All she knew was about the injustices that was happening at that time, and that the adults wasn't doing anything. In her mind, the adults wasn't doing anything about it.
She eventually moved to the Bronx, where she worked as a nurse's aide and focused on being a mother. When approached about doing a movie about her life, Gloria says her sister said this to the screenwriter.
She said, "Every day is a civil rights struggle for black women in America."
The oldest of 8 daughters, Laster says her sister was witty and studious.
She encouraged young people to stand up for your rights, even if you're standing alone.
Colvin was also a woman of faith.
She did believe that the Creator put her here for a reason, and she fulfilled that purpose.
Congresswoman Terry Sewell issued a statement on X today, which reads in part, "Our nation has lost a true civil rights champion. May we honor her legacy by continuing the fight for justice and equality." Reporting live in studio, I'm Amy Hybels, CBS 42 News.
Thank you. In 2021, a judge granted Colvin's request to have her court record expunged. Famed civil rights attorney Fred Gray defended Colvin after her arrest and took her case all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. Right now on CBS42.com, his interview with CBS 42 digital reporter Drew Taylor. Gray speaks about Colvin's legacy. You can find it on our CBS 42 mobile news app.
The Delectable Negro, Human Consumption and Homoeroticism Within U.S. Slave Culture, by Vincent Woodard.
The Trump administration recently unveiled new dietary guidelines, changing the food pyramid to put protein, healthy fats, and vegetables at the top.
Portions of the guidelines have gotten praise. For instance, the Wisconsin Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics said they support the move to avoid highly processed foods and refined carbohydrates.
But the organization and other nutritionists have raised concerns about the emphasis on foods high in saturated fat, like red meat, beef tallow, and butter.
To understand these changes to the dietary guidelines, we have Michelle King-Reimer, a registered dietitian and clinical assistant professor at the Zilber College of Public Health at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. Michelle, welcome to Wisconsin Today.
Absolutely. Thank you for inviting me.
Before we start digging into the specifics of these guidelines, what are these guidelines? Where do they come from?
So the dietary guidelines for Americans are updated every 5 years. They are science-based recommendations, And truly, they're meant to be a guide, kind of like a playbook for policies and program in schools and healthcare and individuals, rather than to be something that's specific to each individual. So this means that they shape federal nutrition programs like school meals and WIC, and ultimately policy follows this guidance. So it's really important for it to be clear.
We got an email question from J.O. who asks, what evidence and analysis lead to changes in dietary guidelines?
I love the question. So as I mentioned, the dietary guidelines are meant to be evidence-based, and they do truly shape how science is interpreted, summarized, and translated. And so until this cycle, the dietary guidelines followed a consistent pattern. So there was an independent advisory committee with nutrition experts. They would review the evidence, produce a scientific report, and then federal agencies would translate that report into policy. And so this really allowed for a clear boundary between scientific judgment and policy authority. I think a good example of that is thinking of it being similar to the separation of church and state. In the 2025-2030 cycle, the process changed. So although the advisory committee, those 20 nutrition experts, completed its report, the USDA and Department of Health and Human Services didn't use that report as primary scientific foundation. They relied on a separate scientific foundation built around, I would say, a different hierarchy of evidence while selectively incorporating conclusions from that expert panel.
So now let's get into these guidelines. You suggested that, hey, the process was different here and that led to some different outcomes. What are some of the things that have concerned you, first of all, when it comes to the messaging you're seeing around these guidelines?
Sure. Well, I think it's important to just highlight that there are many guidelines that haven't changed, right? Balance, variety, moderation continue to be key. And those align with the messaging that you should consume a large amount, or, consume a lot of fruits and vegetables, whole grains, lean proteins, healthy fats, in addition to limiting that added sugar, saturated fats, and excess sodium. So those things are still recommendations that were pulled over from the last 5-year cycle. What I'm seeing are some shifts that potentially the messaging isn't clear or consistent with what is actually based in decades worth of literature, or also within the actual dietary guidelines themselves. One is the increase in protein recommendations. So recommendations now are about twice what was previously recommended in terms of protein intake. And while we know that protein needs are highly variable, most Americans are consuming more than enough protein. And consuming excess protein can still be converted to fat in your body, which ultimately leads to weight gain. So what's missing there is this clarity on the quality of different protein foods. And we know evidence continues to suggest plant-based proteins and fish are associated with more favorable outcomes than diets that are high in red meat. So when we eat a lot of high protein foods, we also get everything that comes alongside of that, correct? Like fats and fiber and sodium. So I like to think of it as this protein package. And that package is what likely makes the difference for health. If you, let's say you were going to have 4 ounces of sirloin steak, you will get about 33 grams of protein, and about 5 grams of that would be saturated fat. If you were then, on the flip side, going to consume a plant-based protein, so a cup of cooked lentils, you would get less protein, so about 18 grams of protein for that serving, but you also get 15 grams of fiber and virtually no saturated fat. So that protein package is what likely really makes that difference for our health.
On the topic of protein, we got an email from Dale who writes, hey, protein is very important, and there are, as you were just getting at, non-meat sources of protein. In the guidelines that we're getting now from the federal government and the way they're talking about them, is there enough emphasis, do you think, on those non-meat proteins, the lentils and things like that you just mentioned?
Correct. I would say, again, the language exists, right, that there are sources of meat and there's also plant sources to get protein. However, the order in which it's presented within the guidelines is it mentions meat and dairy first and then mentions plant-based proteins. Again, there's a bit of a mixed message if you even then consider looking at the new pyramid, is that meat, steak, dairy has been elevated to the top of the pyramid where the visual tells you should eat more of. And then you see the plant-based proteins are actually below that. So from a visual standpoint, it can be confusing to the consumer as well.
I wanted to talk about that upside down pyramid because I'm a little baffled by it compared to what we've seen, the upright pyramid or the plate of food that was in a couple cycles there. There's an upside down pyramid. I mean, just visually glancing at it without looking at any of the information that came along with it. If I look at it, I would look at it and say, hey, whole grain's down on the bottom under a line. I shouldn't eat whole grain. I don't think that's the message they're trying to send exactly. What do you make of that part of the visual communication of these guidelines?
Yes. Well, I would say that when visuals send mixed messages, then people are less likely to act on the guidance, and it also erodes trust. But what I would also say is that, the fundamentals of healthy eating haven't changed nearly as much as the graphic suggests. So again, having that mixed messaging can confuse and erode trust, but the guidelines are not as different as the pyramid would suggest.
We're talking about new dietary guidelines from the federal government. Michelle King-Reimer is with us, clinical assistant professor at the Zilber College of Public Health in UW-Milwaukee, registered dietitian. Michelle, one of the guidelines here, not too controversial, I think, is, hey, cut back on processed foods, ultra-processed foods. I think everybody in the nutrition world agrees on that. But how do we define, can we define what we mean when we say processed and ultra-processed foods?
Yes, there is a classification system that exists. It's called the NOVA classification system, and it categorizes foods into 4 groups based on their level of processing. And this classification helps us in understanding the nutritional quality and the health implications of different food types. So the new guidelines, I think, yes, you're correct. We can get behind reducing ultra-processed foods. I think we need more clarity around this and to look at ultra-processed foods as maybe not forbidden, but as foods to be mindful of in our frequency and also in our portion.
Right. I think one of the things that can be safe to say in the nutrition world is we're never going to see guidance that says, hey, eat more chips and store-bought pastries and stuff like that. Much as I would love to see that guidance, we're pretty rock solid. We're never going to see these listed as the good foods on the pyramid, right?
Well, I would never say never based off of some of the images that are presented on our pyramid now. But I would agree with you is that reducing ultra-processed foods is an important step, and continuing to emphasize limiting added sugars is critical. We just need to make sure that our recommendations are clear, evidence-based, and easy for our public to understand. But I would say really another confusing element is how whole grains are visually represented. So decades of research have shown that whole grains are associated with lower risk of heart disease and diabetes and certain cancers. So the current visual, they appear at the bottom of the pyramid or the plate, and people may interpret that as eat less, even if that wasn't the intent. So when you choose whole grains, you want to make sure that you are choosing just what it says, whole grains, not the ultra-processed, white flour types of foods, chips, cookies, candies, things like that, but actually choosing those grains that provide fiber and vitamins and minerals. Another, as it pertains to saturated fat, the new recommendations also suggest consuming full-fat dairy. However, that's inconsistent with the recommendation to stay below 10% of your daily calories if you are consuming the recommended servings of dairy per day. So I believe that it would be difficult to stay below 10% of your daily calories from saturated fat if you consume 3 full-fat versions of dairy per day. For example, if you had, 1 cup of whole milk, a 3/4 cup of full-fat Greek yogurt, and an ounce of cheese, you're already at 17 grams of saturated fat. And if we're considering this for a 2,000 calorie a day diet, you're almost to your limit of 22 grams per day. So if you add a single tablespoon of butter or beef tallow that has been suggested as an option, you're going to overconsume saturated fat for that day.
Now, as a classic Wisconsinite, I'll have anywhere from 3 to 7 different kinds of cheese in my fridge at a time. Finally, I hear in the public a lot of confusion, I think, when it comes to, well, wait, what am I supposed to eat? What are my dietary guidelines? I'm guessing as a dietitian, you hear that even more. What is the biggest point of confusion you hear from people that you'd want to, having this platform, that you'd want to clear up for them?
Well, my advice is to focus less on any single graphic and more on a consistent theme that hasn't changed. And that's eat plenty of fruits and vegetables, choose whole grains often, include a variety of protein sources, limit added sugars, and also be mindful of saturated fat. And those principles are still strongly supported by decades of research. But ultimately, healthy eating should support enjoyment, energy, and the quality of your life, not be stressful.
Michelle, we'll leave it there. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Have a great day.
I'm Jordan with the mic. Want to gamble?
Well, another major sports gambling scandal has come to light. Federal prosecutors in Pennsylvania today announced charges in connection with a widespread scheme to fix college basketball games. The indictment alleges that dozens of players from 17 Division I teams were paid cash bribes to underperform, as bettors placed millions of dollars in wagers on the fixed games. NPR sports correspondent Becky Sullivan joins us now to talk about all this. Hi, Becky.
Hey, Elsa.
Hey. Okay, so tell us what prosecutors say they found here.
Yeah, so they say that this scheme was first cooked up in the fall of 2022 by a pair of high-stakes gamblers, gambling influencers, essentially, who came up with this. It's just a classic point-shaving scheme, really. Basically, they bribed players to play poorly, then they would bet a bunch of money on that team to come up short against the spread. And so they start with an American player, the indictment alleges, who's playing overseas in the Chinese professional basketball league. And then as that worked, ultimately, they decided to move on to the NCAA here in the U.S. And ultimately, prosecutors say they entangled dozens of players over 2 seasons, as you say, and now there are 26 people who are facing charges. Most of them are former players.
Amazing. Okay, so did this alleged scheme actually work?
I mean, well, until now, yeah. The players were offered bribes, cash bribes of like $10,000 up to $30,000, delivered in cash. The conspirators, prosecutors say, targeted players whose, payments that they receive from name, image, and likeness, that kind of licensing stuff that college players can get paid for now. They targeted players from small-time schools who just weren't making that much NIL money, if any at all. So we're talking schools like Eastern Michigan, Kennesaw State, Nicole State. These are not big-time programs. The biggest name of of a school in this is DePaul. That's in the Big East Conference. That's like kind of a historically very significant college basketball conference. And so players are alleged to have fixed games against like Butler, Georgetown, St. John's. This is a big deal, even though they're kind of small name schools. Yeah. The amounts of money involved were huge. One player was paid $200 in cash, and a package was delivered to a storage unit in Florida. The evidence includes all these text messages, photos, details about the bets and when to pick up the money. And, one text message that caught my eye from this, one conspirator texts another, nothing is guaranteed in this world but death, taxes, and Chinese basketball.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, college students, they need money. Well, okay, I just want to ask you one question, Becky, because this feels like it's the latest in a whole series of big federal indictments about corruption in sports gambling, right? Like, I remember there was one involving the NBA last fall, then one with a couple Major League Baseball pitchers. How does this case compare with those cases?
Well, I think especially compared to the NBA indictment, this one is worse in a way. In the NBA one, you had people that were sort of like, in another way of saying it, trading on insider info. A player knew he was going to sit out a game, so he told a friend. That friend sold that information to bettors. But in this, you have players bribed directly to alter their performances. These games were clearly affected by that. Federal prosecutor David Metcalf of the Eastern District of Pennsylvania spoke to that today.
When criminals pollute the purity of sports by manipulating competition, it doesn't just imperil the integrity of sports betting markets, it imperils the integrity of sport itself. And everything that sports represent to us, hard work, determination, and fairness.
So the victims here aren't just the betting companies, he says, but also like the teammates who thought they were competing for real and fans who were watching.
Yeah. Well, are there any takeaways here for college basketball, you think?
Well, I think the NCAA is uniquely vulnerable to this. They have, there's 360 plus teams in Division I college basketball. There are thousands of games every season. That's just men's Division I basketball alone. There has been a massive effort by the NCAA over the last 5 years to figure out how to kind of adequately protect against all this. Today, they thanked law enforcement. They said the integrity of the game is of the utmost importance. They're running their own investigations, but this is why the NCAA advocates for regulations on gambling on college sports.
That is NPR's Becky Sullivan. Thank you, Becky.
You're welcome.
So living down in L.A., California, what you say about Los Angeles? Still the only place for me that never rains in sun. To living down in L.A.
It has been a year since fires ripped through Los Angeles, and researchers are just beginning to get a sense of the health effects. Their discoveries are helping fire survivors, and as NPR's Alejandra Barunda reports, they could help others in the future.
The Palisades and Eaton fires were scarier than past wildfires because it wasn't just trees and plants that were burning.
Like EVs, plastic, plasma TVs, and solar panels, you name it.
That's Yifeng Zhu. She's an air pollution scientist at the University of California, Los Angeles. During the fires, she and her colleagues like Yuan Yao rushed out into the smoke to take samples of the dirty air. Now, a full year after the burns, Yao, Zhu, and other researchers are starting to get answers to some basic questions that somehow hadn't been answered before. Joe Allen is an exposure scientist at Harvard University.
We know a lot about the health effects of wildfire smoke. We don't know all that much about urban wildfire smoke.
Like, what's in that smoke? How dangerous is it? And how do you clean it up?
We certainly don't know what happens when you expose a population of 20 million people in the greater Los Angeles area to smoke like this, enriched in these toxic metals and other pollutants.
Zhu focused on what's in the smoke. During the height of the burns, she and her team found benzene, which is a carcinogen. And they saw other dangerous gases like carbon tetrachloride lingering in people's homes for weeks after the fires were out.
The big public health message, I think, is really clear. Just the fire impact doesn't really end with the active flame.
The risk doesn't end when the fires are out. Researchers also found dangerous toxins and heavy metals like lead and arsenic in the smoke and debris. Allen says all those toxic findings point to another big unanswered issue. There weren't, and still aren't, clear, consistent guidelines for how to clean up your home, test it, and know it's safe.
It's a bit Wild West out there.
Allen's research, along with others, is helping to clarify recommendations for how to do that.
The lack of consistency of standardization has really harmed the LA survivor community.
The other question for researchers is the big one. What did exposure to the fire and its smoke and debris really do to people's health? A team of doctors at the Cedars-Sinai Hospital combed ER records from 90 days after the burns. They found a big bump in respiratory issues and a 46% jump in heart attacks. Susan Chang is a cardiovascular expert at Cedars-Sinai who led the study.
This actually surpassed heart attack rates seen during January of all prior years, even during the worst years of COVID.
They also found a doubling of abnormal blood tests. Chang says that indicates
the wildfire exposures led to some kind of a biochemical or metabolic stress on the body that likely affected not just one but many organ systems.
But Chang says this finding is only the beginning. Tracking health long-term will help show what's really happening. Several studies are in the works, including ones tracking women who were pregnant at the time and firefighters who were on the front lines. Alan says that ongoing research is crucial.
These are simple questions that we didn't have answers to, and that the people of LA and everywhere else who are going to be impacted deserve to have answers to.
Alan says he hopes the research can turn the tragedy into policies that can help protect people in the future when similar fires inevitably hit again. Alejandra Borunda, NPR News.
You see, but they're very unhappy about their appearance. I think there's an article in the handout about a woman white woman who was in Hawaii. And she said that being around the Hawaiian people and the Asian people, and she said she was tall and white and pale. She said she felt like a freak. And so then she started getting involved in genetic science.
Who gets to be a parent today has been reshaped by increased access to IVF or in vitro fertilization. Today, a record number of single women in their 40s are using it to become moms, but this path is still new and it isn't easy for them. NPR's Pallavi Gogoi brings us the story of one mom in Nashville, Tennessee, who's navigating this cultural shift.
Laura Terry was approaching her 40s when she gave herself an interesting present.
For my 39th birthday, I bought a vial of donor sperm, which is a kind of odd birthday gift to buy yourself, I suppose.
That was just the beginning for Terry, who's 44 and works at a top management consulting firm. She decided to start a family on her own through IVF. That's how she had her 2 daughters.
Old MacDonald went to school.
Eleanor, who is now 4.
And at whole school she learned. What did she learn? E-I-E-I-O.
And Margaret, who is 2, they're a riot, creating their own nursery rhymes in their car ride to daycare.
Numbers.
Terry never really cared about having a partner. She got the idea of pursuing IVF from a book where the author wrote about her own journey.
I had never heard of being a single mom by choice before that. And it was like a light bulb went off.
That light bulb is going off for a lot of women at a time when more Americans than ever are single. The number of unmarried women over 40 who are having kids has grown by 250% in the last 3 decades. Still, Terry hesitated about becoming a single parent, especially after a friend told her it was a terrible idea. But she knew she wanted a family and she couldn't let go.
I'd started thinking about this idea. Something about my fertility is at risk.
So she went for it. But Terry was extremely anxious about how her family in Knoxville would react because it was an unfamiliar concept. She remembers the moment she broke the news to her parents. It was after Thanksgiving dinner in 2019.
I started crying as I was telling them this, that I really value our family and I want to have a family of my own.
The room felt heavy. There was a moment of stunned silence.
And then my dad looked at my mom and he says, "Joe, where's the champagne?"
That support was a huge relief for Terry. Her next task, choosing a donor. Top priorities, family health history, education, and that the donor looked somewhat like her.
I had a spreadsheet that was like 30 rows long and 30 columns wide.
Then she started getting ready for IVF. That process can be painful and complicated. She got her eggs retrieved, and then they were fertilized in a lab to make an embryo. Terry got pregnant on her first try.
I should be quite grateful for what my process was overall.
But not all women are as lucky. Many women have to try multiple times with no guarantee they will ever get pregnant. Plus, there's the price tag. Each try can cost as much as $30,000. It's why IVF is out of reach for many. Terry's was covered by her employer.
I am incredibly fortunate to have unbelievably good health benefits.
Which is quite rare. Only 1 in 4 companies offer such benefits. Terry faces all the challenges of being a single mom. On top of that, she often feels the burden of having to explain her family. When she moved into her new home in Nashville, a neighbor asked what her husband did for work. She answered they're a family of a mom with 2 kids.
And he said, "Oh, I'm so sorry." Was he sorry I didn't have a husband? I still don't know to this day. But there's very much a moment of feeling other and different.
Other and different. Terry worries her 2 daughters could also feel that way.
One of her classmates said, "Hey, Eleanor, is that your mom?" And she said, "Yes." And then they said, "Well, where's your dad?" And Eleanor just froze in that moment.
But such moments don't preoccupy her all the time. Terry loves being a mom and is amazed by the power of touch and how holding her kids close can calm them. Not to mention the joy of singing with them.
I love the curtains. I love the walkie-talkie.
Pallavi Gugoy, NPR News.
I said a movie
Shortage of white people lately. I ain't seen no white folks no more. Y'all stop fucking? White folks into yoga. You can't get no nut doing no yoga. You got to get the pussy. They stopped fucking because some rich white man told them. Said, "Look, come on, cut the crap. Jesus Christ, there's too many people on earth. I have no place to ride my horsey."
Birth rates are falling in the U.S. and around the world. As families shrink, researchers say it means big changes for economies and whole societies. Most of the public discussion around this population shift is being shaped by conservatives, but some progressive groups and mainstream experts say it's time for a broader discussion about a future with fewer children. NPR's Sarah McCammon and Brian Mann report.
When Brian and I first started looking at this shift toward smaller families, we found a lot of people who describe themselves as progressives are thinking about this issue a lot.
A lot of people our age are not having kids or waiting for very long, and they have a great life regardless.
Emma Brennan and Lauren Wright got married recently. They live in a warehouse loft in Baltimore. They say they want kids, but the world often feels like a scary place to raise children. They worry about climate change, rising income inequality, and America's polarized politics.
It's really making me personally question, okay, do I really, really want this?
I feel like we have conversations about the state of the world, and I feel like we've seen a lot of change in our lifetime, not necessarily for good.
Yeah.
Right, and Brennan told us they are hearing leaders talk about parenting and falling birth rates, but those voices are mostly on the right.
That whole Trump thing, we'll give you a bunch of money or a few grand.
Under a program proposed by Trump and passed by the Republican-controlled Congress, the U.S. government will invest $1,000 for each baby born to American citizens during his term in office. And that's just one proposal. Conservatives have embraced a whole range of pro-natalist ideas, which advocate for having more babies with urgency. Here's Elon Musk speaking on Bill Maher's HBO show.
I just think we should be cautious about some of the civilizational decline and we have plummeting birth rates most places.
But in our reporting, we found many progressive-leaning groups have stayed mostly silent on the policy debate around birth rate decline.
Many mainstream academics have also shied away from talking about this issue, at least publicly.
And some told us point blank they fear even talking about fertility decline could validate more extreme ideas. Ruth Braunstein is a sociologist at Johns Hopkins University who studies right-wing movements.
Because once we start talking about things as a crisis, it justifies all manner of emergency measures that often involves controlling people.
Braunstein does think shrinking families could affect everything from pension systems to the social fabric of communities. But for many on the left, Braunstein says hearing government officials talk about trying to increase birth rates raises fears about the prospect of coerced reproduction.
One of the defining documents of modern feminism is The Handmaid's Tale, the dystopian novel by Margaret Atwood made into a television series where women are forced to bear children to counter low birth rates.
You girls will serve the leaders and their barren wives. You will bear children for them.
Many groups on the right have proposed limits on reproductive rights, including bans on abortion. Others on the far right have voiced opposition to contraception or called for limits on divorce.
Braunstein thinks the debate over fertility rates in the U.S. is also being shaped by conservative fears about diversity and immigration.
We are now no longer a majority white Christian nation, and in some period of time, we'll no longer be a majority white population. And so that's one piece of the demographic change that I hear a lot about.
Many people we spoke to on the political left in the U.S. and in other countries told us this coding of low birth rates as a right-wing concern means progressives have stayed on the sidelines of the conversation for too long.
It's a problem that has been avoided by feminists.
Martina Yopo Diaz is a sociologist at the Catholic University of Santiago in Chile, who describes herself as a progressive. She thinks it's long overdue for researchers like herself to face this demographic reality and come up with their own solutions and policy ideas.
From a very feminist perspective, everyone has the right not to have children, but also people have the right to have children and to parent in safe and sustainable environments.
But getting more feminists and other progressives, as well as academics, to engage the policy debate over birth rates may not be easy.
These things are all, a tricky minefield.
Alice Evans is a researcher at King's College London who studies women's issues. She's working currently as a visiting professor at Stanford University. Evans thinks the debate over falling birth rates is being skewed by what she calls a troubling silence from many progressives.
If progressives don't want to talk about it and self-censor, etc., then no one is going to talk about things that might impact progressives.
Evans thinks there are important ideas on the left that might make it easier for women to choose more children, boosting gender equity, for example, so that women carry less of the burden of parenting, or expanding economic support for low-income families that want kids. She says progressives would need to offer incentives and aid big enough to offset the significant costs of parenting.
It could be in the form of housing, it could be in terms of bonuses on your pension, it could be a tax rebate. That benefit would need to be large enough to sort of say, okay, fine, I'll make this big costly investment.
Leslie Root, a researcher at the University of Colorado Boulder, thinks there is growing awareness on the political left that declining birth rates are a real challenge and that many families need help in the form of left-leaning policies like guaranteed paid parental leave.
Across the ideological spectrum, people have identified that maybe these are winning policies, right? That these are things that people want, that people maybe aren't able to have the children that they want to have.
We asked Emma Brennan and Lauren Wright, the couple in Baltimore, about this policy debate over shrinking families. They say affordability is one of their biggest concerns.
Hearing what some of our friends pay for daycare,
it's insane.
Is wild.
Universal pre-K would be awesome.
They are planning now for their first child, a personal choice that's scary but joyous.
I never really envisioned having a baby with somebody until I met Lauren, and I was like, oh, this is the person I want to do it with.
I actually have a wonderful life it would be wonderful to bring a child into.
As their family grows, Brennan and Wright say they want to hear more ideas that might make life easier and less costly for people like them who want to have children. I'm Brian Mann.
And I'm Sarah McCammon, NPR News.
Medical apartheid, the dark history of medical experimentation on Black Americans from colonial times to the present.
The death of a Black midwife following complications from giving birth has renewed difficult questions about inequities around Black maternal health care. Black women are still at a considerably higher risk to die from a pregnancy-related cause than white women. Stephanie Sy has more on this story.
Janelle Green Smith, 31, was laid to rest in Spartanburg, South Carolina this week. Her death sent shockwaves through the community of Black midwives, which include her aunt, Nicole Wardlaw.
What do you think people will remember most about Janelle?
They talked about her being the friend that was the glue that held everything together, that she showed up for people, that her presence, she had a big presence.
This is Green Smith in April 2024.
I wanted to be a part of the solution and step into a role as the provider that would listen to my patients when they said they were in pain. I wanted to be the provider that would answer the questions and that would go above and beyond to allow my patients to feel comfortable in their journey of pregnancy and in labor.
The patients loved her, that she would show up for them, she loved on them. I remember someone talking about how she was just always asking why. Why is this? Why is that? That she wanted to know the why and make things better.
That's the question I keep asking myself is why. She had so much knowledge. She was an experienced midwife. Why did this happen?
It was the perfect storm. She was pregnant. She developed preeclampsia, but she never stopped working, fighting, showing up. She showed up. She had a shift the day before she was admitted to the hospital herself. She worked 12 hours and caught 7 babies. So she showed up for clients and did the work, even though she herself really needed to be cared for. So as a midwife, who midwives the midwife?
Wardlaw says Greensmith herself didn't have a midwife because there weren't other practices in the area that took her insurance. In the United States, black women are 3 times more likely to die from a pregnancy-related cause than white women.
There's a foot.
Integrating midwives into maternal care has been shown in studies to decrease maternal deaths. Jessica Brumley is president of the American College of Nurse Midwives.
Black women are at higher rates of cesarean section, at higher rates of preeclampsia. They have higher rates of almost every possible comorbidity or complication, right, that an individual can have. They're more likely to seek care in systems of care that are not high quality.
How are you today?
And we know that standardized care and care practices can help to improve outcomes.
Do we know why Black women are more susceptible to preeclampsia in pregnancy?
The chronic stress, the generations of chronic stress, the different exposures to racism in this country, and all of that adds and creates what is known as weathering, right? And so it makes it more difficult to manage these conditions in individuals who've had these exposures.
There's no cure for preeclampsia, but it can be resolved once the baby is born. Greensmith underwent an emergency cesarean section, which carries its own risks.
Her incision opened up, and so they had to take her back to the operating room to close the incision. And it was after that operation that during the recovery period, there were complications, and that ultimately contributed to her death.
Explain to us, how is it that Black women are still so much more vulnerable to dying of pregnancy-related causes than other women?
This is a really complex issue, but I think that it comes down to the fact that the system is designed to create these outcomes. You know, we get the outcomes that the system is designed for. And when we think about historically where our system has come from, it came from centering childbirth into the hospital, away from the community, away from the people who cared for us, right? Our community-based midwives, Black granny midwives, and that nurturing environment into an environment that wasn't welcoming and still isn't often very welcoming for Black women in our country.
I don't know if it was professional courtesy that the assumption was just made that she knew all of the things and would be able to take care of herself. I don't know if there were expectations of her that wouldn't be expectations of other people. But what I do know is that she's not coming back, and we never want this to happen to anybody else.
Brumley says gaps in postpartum care in the U.S. don't just harm Black women.
So if we can design a system where Black women have the best outcomes, everyone else will have better outcomes too. Because even though Black women have some of the worst outcomes in the U.S. has some of the worst maternal health outcomes in the world. So white women aren't doing much better in this country. We have to think about how do we change what we offer, and offering a service that people think is valuable. No one should have to fear for their life in order to grow their family. And I don't think it's fair that people should lose the joy of what should really be an amazing, beautiful life event.
Janelle got to experience some of that joy, holding her daughter Eden, if only for a short while. Born premature, Eden is still in the hospital.
Eden is doing great. She's thriving, she's growing, she's meeting her milestones. She is the feistiest little fighter. She has her mother's spirit.
For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Stephanie Sy.
I don't want us to lose sight that things are getting better. Each successive generation seems to be making progress in changing attitudes when it comes to race. Doesn't mean we're in a post-racial society. It doesn't mean that racism is eliminated. But you know, when I talk to Malia and Sasha, and I listen to their friends and I see them interact, they're better than we are. They're better than we were on these issues. And that's true in every community that I've visited all across the country.
Good evening. Parents of an Albuquerque high school student are outraged after a racial slur was written on their daughter's car.
And as News 13's Madison Connor reports, they want the student responsible to come forward and take responsibility.
Before classes ended for winter break, Elby Johnson and Trinette Martin said they got a call from their daughter in the parking lot of Albuquerque High School.
She said that her cousin had came up to her and told her that her car had been written on.
Written in the dust on her window was the N-word.
She wasn't distraught. She wasn't like...
It was more shock.
Yeah. She was very like, I can't believe that happened. That's crazy.
The family immediately reported the incident to school administrators, but they're disappointed on how the school has handled it.
We rock with the school. Our daughters play sports for the school, so she's alumni at the school. So we trusted the school to actually do something about it. Once it rolled around to where now we're going on a month and there's no answers, and when the principal finally did call us last week, it was to say, I'm investigating it.
Johnson says his daughter isn't the only victim.
It's not just our children. It happened to 2 other children, at this school. This is racism. This is blatant racism.
APS spokesperson Martine Salazar said in a statement to News 13 that the school jumped on the matter immediately and, quote, their investigation was delayed because students and staff were out for 2.5 weeks. Salazar said they resumed the investigation last week, and despite having cameras, they've been unable to identify any suspects.
I got a call and they said, we reviewed tapes. We didn't see anybody by her car. We didn't see anybody there, but clearly the word's written there, so obviously somebody had to do it.
And while they say they are upset about the whole situation, they just want everyone involved to learn from it and do better.
We need to educate our children that it's not okay to use that word, no matter who you are. It's hurtful, it's hate, it's not a joke, and that's what's important for us, that we use this as a teachable moment.
Madison Connor, KRQE, News 13.
APS says the investigation is ongoing and anyone with information is asked to contact APS police. Their full statement is on our website at krqe.com.
I can feel it deep inside, this black nigga's pride. I have no fear when I say, and I say it every day, every nigga is a star. Every nigga is a star. Who will deny that you and I and every nigga is a star?
An Eyewitness News exclusive, a man facing several charges, including a hate crime charge after a fight at a suburban bar. It happened at Mac and Frankie's bar in Bradley last month. That suspect was just charged this week.
ABC 7's Trey Ward joining us live in studio tonight after speaking exclusively to the victim about what happened. Trey.
Cheryl and Rob, it was supposed to be a normal night out for Vanessa Sherrod. She says it happened at a bar she's been to on numerous occasions. That was until she says she was called a racial slur before being assaulted and thrown out.
A tense confrontation spilling out of a bar captured on cell video and involving a Kankakee man now accused of a hate crime.
Y'all let him call her a racial slur?
We've blurred the faces of the people in the video who do not face any charges.
Ain't nobody did nothing to y'all.
Vanessa Sherrod is now reflecting on how her holidays turned violent at Mac and Frankie's bar in Bradley on December 23rd, just before midnight.
I did nothing wrong. I never even looked his way.
In this redacted security video provided to ABC7 by Bradley Police, you see the moments that led up to the fight. There's no audio on the clip, and the faces of everyone else in the video are blurred since they don't face charges. A man is seen sitting at the bar alone before Sherrod, her girlfriend, and another friend sit near him for drinks.
You will see in the surveillance video, he was staring at me the whole time. He said, "Take that N-word somewhere else."
A manager is called in by the bartender, who Sherrod says eventually tells her group to leave.
And as I was about to put my cup down, she tries taking it out of my hand.
Things quickly escalate from there.
All I know is just like a bunch of white men just come grabbing me and forcing me out. The white man that called me the N-word, he still had me as I was out the establishment. That's when I like hit the ground and I just heard my thumb crack.
The 27-year-old was left with a broken thumb and some hair ripped out. Police were later called and arrested 71-year-old Nicholas Monticelli, charging him with multiple counts of battery and a hate crime.
You shouldn't feel uncomfortable anywhere if you want to go out and enjoy yourself. It's 2026.
Investigators say the suspect did admit to putting his hands on the victim, claiming because she was using foul language in the bar. Messages left for Monticelli and for the bar's owner were not returned.
Let me say something that gets to the very crux of the matter, and this may be offensive for some to hear who are not on the side that we're on. White people, we have been the problem for 400 years. Say that again. Let me say it one more time for those of you who didn't hear me. White people, we have been the problem for 400 years.
That breaking news from the 7 investigators. A local judge accused of making racist and homophobic comments is vacating her position after being removed from her docket more than a year ago.
It's a story the 7 investigators first broke in September of 2024. 7 investigator Heather Catallo is here with what she has learned.
This has been a long process. You'll recall we revealed recordings of Judge Kathleen Ryan making some shocking statements. Judge Ryan has essentially been on paid leave for 15 months and once described herself in those recordings as untouchable. The Judicial Tenure Commission has been investigating this for more than a year, but they did not take action against her. Her lawyers confirming to me late today that she is retiring, and the vacancy for her position has already been posted by the governor's office for potential candidates to apply for an appointment to the bench.
I can honestly say that, okay, I'm not systemically racist, I'm a new racist.
The 7 investigators were the first to reveal the recordings that Oakland County officials say prompted Judge Kathleen Ryan's removal from her docket in August of 2024.
Black. I'm so off at this Black Lives Matter, hashtag Me Too, all this. Oh my God, I'm like, you.
On Wednesday, a judicial vacancy was posted on the State Bar website saying the former Oakland County Chief Probate Pro Tem Judge was vacating her position on the bench.
The Honorable Kathleen A. Ryan presiding. Good morning. You may be seated.
Ryan was a probate judge for 13 years until the Oakland County Probate Court administrator filed a complaint against her, alleging Ryan had been harassing him, calling him after hours for years, and making racist and other inappropriate comments.
I've never met anybody that enjoys hurting people and brags about it the way she does, or intimidating people, scaring people.
Hutton says his complaint was not acted on for months, so he then sent the recordings of his calls with Judge Ryan to state and county officials.
I just want to make it right, and I want the people in Oakland County that come to court to get a fair shake, to have their day in court, to have an unbiased trier of facts.
If you're black from any other country, you're doing way better. If you're an American black person, then you're a lazy piece of.
Judge Ryan has been paid for the last 15 months while she was out of the courthouse, and taxpayers have been footing the bill for visiting judges to handle her docket. Now her lawyers say she is retiring and leaving the bench. Judicial Tenure Commission investigations are not public unless they reach the point of the JTC filing formal charges. Again, that did not happen in this case, so the results of that will not be made public. Now, meanwhile, I did speak with one of Judge Ryan's colleagues, Judge Daniel A. O'Brien. He said Judge Ryan was a good judge, and he expressed frustration that the court was left with visiting judges for so long while the JTC investigated, saying that really left a lot of cases not having continuity. So at least there's some resolution. She's retiring.
At least, and I'm sure a lot of people who have been in front of her are going back in their memories and going, wow.
Did I get a fair shake? Yeah. All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
When you don't vote, you can't sit on a jury. You have no right to complain about the police because you won't even go and vote so you can even sit on a jury. As I've said to the cows when I first started to call in, I spent 11 years on a job where I worked for a bank and had to sit in court day after day, after day after day. And I watched them select juries. I watched black people going to jail, black people having white probation officers, and the whole judicial system just truncated with white supremacy. And a great deal of it some of it could be lessened if black people simply voted.
The U.S. may soon see the largest ever drop in the number of black lawmakers in Congress. That's according to a new analysis by NPR, and it depends on what the Supreme Court decides in a major case about redistricting and the Voting Rights Act. NPR's Hansi Lewang has this story.
For decades, in places where voting is racially polarized, what's known as Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act has helped make sure racial minorities have an equal opportunity to participate in elections.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Justice, and may it please the court.
But at the Supreme Court back in October,
race-based redistricting is fundamentally contrary to our Constitution.
Louisiana Solicitor General Benjamin Aguinaldo helped make the case against Section 2. And now many legal experts are expecting the court's conservative majority to weaken Section 2 protections for districts where racial minority voters make up a large enough population that they have a realistic opportunity of electing their preferred candidate.
It's going to affect every single level of election there is. This is really major, absolutely major.
Press Robinson is a black civil rights activist in Louisiana. Robinson led a Section 2 lawsuit that ultimately led to the creation of Louisiana's second majority black congressional district. It's one of at least 15 in southern states, from Louisiana and eastward to North Carolina, each with a sizable minority population represented by a black Democratic member of Congress. NPR has found that if the Supreme Court weakens Section 2, those 15 districts could be eliminated through redistricting by Republican state lawmakers.
We will not have blacks representing our voice anywhere, at any level, except on a very minute scale. And that is not where we should be in 2026.
It's not clear how many of those 15 at-risk districts Republican-led states would try to wipe out. They may decide to keep some for partisan reasons. But losing even a handful of those districts could fuel the largest ever drop in the number of black representatives in Congress. For a century after the Civil War, that figure stayed in the single digits, or at zero. But since the passing of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, that number has grown to 63 black represented districts today, or about 14% of the current House.
For so many of us here today, Section 2 is why we stand before you as members of the Congressional Black Caucus.
Democratic Representative Terry Sewell of Alabama spoke on Capitol Hill after the Supreme Court's hearing in October.
If this court strikes down these critical provisions, it would not only reverse decades of precedent, but it would also take us back to a dark time in our nation's history, a time when discrimination against minority voters went unchecked.
Catherine Tate, a political science professor at Brown University, points out Section 2 has helped Congress better reflect the country's demographics.
Minority members of Congress are more likely to sponsor bills that talk about minority interests, even controlling for political party. So diversity really is important in terms of fair representation, equal representation of American voters.
Representation in state legislatures is also at stake. According to estimates by voting rights advocacy groups, including Fair Fight Action, close to 200 Democratic-held seats, mostly representing majority black districts in the South, could be eliminated through redistricting if the Supreme Court weakens Section 2. Fair Fight Action CEO Lauren Groh-Wargo says these changes could play out over years.
We could see a very rapid, effective dismantling of black representation at the congressional level and possibly at the state legislative level in a couple of states. I think other states may hold off and wait.
When it comes to voting rights and other rights for people of color, it's always a fight.
For Press Robinson, the civil rights activist who sued for Louisiana's second majority black congressional district, it's all a reminder that the struggle for fair representation never ends.
There's never a time that we get what we deserve and that we should have without having to fight for it.
And the fight over the Voting Rights Act may not be over at the Supreme Court after the justices rule in this redistricting case. The court is also considering taking up a separate set of cases that could further undermine protections for racial minority voters. Anzi Luong, NPR News.
You're dirt. We think you're dirt, Paul. Who is we? The West, all the superpowers, everything you believe in, Paul. They think you're dirt. They think you're dung. You're worthless.
I'm afraid I don't understand what you are saying, sir.
Oh, come on, don't bullshit me, Paul. You're the smartest man here. You got them all eating out of your hands. You could own this freaking hotel, except for one thing. You're black. You're not even a nigger. You're an African.
Hello and welcome. US President Donald Trump has issued an ultimatum to Somalis living in America. He has ended the temporary protected status for several thousand Somalis, and they must leave the country by March the 17th. What is the Trump administration saying to the Somali nationals? Well, temporary means temporary. Buy a one-way ticket to your country, go back, or we will send you back ourselves. We are putting Americans first. That's the core idea behind this ultimatum. The US Department of Homeland Security also posted a picture of Trump with a caption, "I am the captain now." This is a reference to the film Captain Phillips, in which a tanker is seized by Somali pirates. Why is this move significant? Well, the Temporary Protected Status, or TPS, protects certain foreigners from deportation to disaster zones and allows them the right to work. But the Trump administration believes that Somalis no longer need it. Why? Because it claims that the conditions in Somalia have improved. But there is a level of irony in this statement. The US has been regularly bombing ISIS targets in Somalia. The latest airstrike was conducted last weekend. In fact, since Trump's return to the White House last year, the US has dramatically stepped up airstrikes in Somalia. Now the question is, if living conditions in Somalia have improved, why is the US going on with its bombing spree? Now that the Trump administration has revoked the protected status for Somalis, the move is going to impact thousands of Somali nationals living in the US, and the largest community lives in Minnesota. It has around 80,000 members. Minnesota has been at the center of Trump's anti-immigration crackdown. His administration has accused Somali nationals of large-scale public benefit fraud. 98 people accused of embezzlement of public funds face federal charges. And US Attorney General Pam Bondi has stressed that 85 of them were of Somali descent. Last week, federal officers killed a local woman in Minnesota, sparking protests. Despite the backlash and mounting public anger, Trump has doubled down on his anti-Somalia tirade. He has called the Minnesota ICE protests fake. The US is also set to revoke citizenship of naturalized Somali immigrants guilty of fraud.
We're getting them out. We've got a lot of them out already, but we're getting them out. We're also going to revoke the citizenship of any naturalized immigrant from Somalia or anywhere else who is convicted of defrauding our citizens. We're going to get them the hell out of here fast. And if you come to America to rob Americans, we're throwing you in jail and we're sending you back to the place from where you came.
And then there's Ilhan Omar, a Democratic representative from Minnesota who is of Somali descent. The US president has sparred with her on multiple occasions.
To imprison any fraudster, politician, or public official involved in these sick plots to loot and pillage our country. Think of that Ilhan Omar. She lives in Somalia. They don't have a government. They don't have a military. They don't have police. They don't have anything. All they have is murder and robbing ships, bringing in ships, pirates.
Whether it is Somalis living in the US or the Somali government, Donald Trump has vowed to spare none. Trump has ended all aid to the Somali government, accusing it of fraud. Amid Trump's growing hostility and revocation of the TPS, the fate of several thousand Somali nationals living in the US is hanging in limbo. And for more on this, joining us is Meki El Maghrabi, an international affairs expert live from Cairo in Egypt. Welcome to First Post Africa.
Thank you, Joshua, and thank you for the audience of First Post Africa.
Let's first look at this ultimatum that Trump is giving, referring to the protected status of so many Somalis living in the US. How significant is this for them?
I think Trump's move most likely to face immediate challenges through American courts, and the implementation may be delayed, may be blocked, or partially stopped by the judiciary, because we witnessed the same game before. But the contradiction is here. When Trump canceled the TPS, temporary protected status, based on the situation improved in Somalia, but Trump himself is always saying they don't have president, they don't have government, they don't have nothing. So that if the situation improved, that means he should change his idea about Somalia, and that will be one of the evidence in front of the courts when they look at the case.
Let's now look at a specific post that Trump has made, of course, referring to himself as the captain, implications with Somali pirates. How damaging is this on the global stage, given there are also tensions currently ongoing within Somalia?
It is damaging because we have enough of hate language or hate situation among the world, but it is nothing more than dark comedy, and Trump is always being the king of this political comedy. So, but my question here, we have never heard about Somali pirates through our life just after the war in Somalia and after the Western intervention, American intervention and the Western intervention. So who made some Somali pirates? It is the war, and it is America itself, and it is the interventionist policy that Trump himself challenged and said that it was wrong for the United States to go and invade other countries. And he criticized what happened in Iraq, in Libya, and in others. And I think if there are some Somali pirates, USA is the reason of that.
Meki, I want to look at some of the rhetoric that Donald Trump has used to describe Somalis living in the US and beyond. Of course, looking at Ilhan Omar as well. Some have described it as racist. Do you see it as that, or is this strategic from Trump? And if so, why?
I think we don't need to fuel the internal conflict inside the United States. Unfortunately, the Somalis now are paying the price that the relation between Trump and Ilhan Omar is bad. So Ilhan Omar challenged Trump, and Trump is firing back, and Ilhan is criticizing. So now Somali people, they are in the crossfire between this situation. And actually it is fight between Republicans and the Democrats. Unfortunately, the Arab and the Muslims, now they feel that they betrayed by Trump because they supported him in the election. And that because of the position of the Democrats regarding Gaza and the Palestinian rights. Because they failed the Palestinians and they betrayed the Palestinians, then the Somalis and maybe among the Arabs and the Muslims, they supported Trump just like to challenge the Democrats. But now they are not getting anything good from Trump, and that is not good for the relation between Trump and the Arab people inside his countries and the Africans and the African worldwide.
And Meki, briefly to finish, do you think there is anything that Somalia and the wider African community can do to counter Trump's rhetoric and actions?
I think the court will see the case. And based on the situation that the Somali people, they are need to have shelter in some other countries and to have safe havens in other countries, based on Trump saying that Somalis have no country, have no president. They do have president, and very wonderful president, Hassan Sheikh Mahmoud, but unfortunately, it is in evidence in front of the court. So I think Somalis will win the legal case.
Meki El Maghrabi, as always, thank you ever so much for joining us on First Post Africa.
The man knot, race, class, genre, and the dilemmas of black manhood.
Get to our big story tonight. A grieving family achieves its goal after 13 years.
Yeah, that's how long it had been before anyone faced criminal charges in the chokehold death of Corey Stingley inside a West Dallas store. 3 men held the 16-year-old down after accusing the teen of shoplifting $6 worth of alcohol. Now, more than a decade later, felony murder charges and a family getting the justice it's been seeking. Emily Pofall is outside the Milwaukee County Courthouse for us tonight.
And Emily, this is an unusual case where prosecutors, the defendants, and the victim's family finally reached an agreement.
Right, guys. Yeah, well, typically the courtroom is the only opportunity for grieving families to express to a perpetrator how an incident or a crime has impacted them. But in this case, it was a meeting outside the courtroom that led to the healing and the closure the family got today.
What do we want? Justice! When do we want it? Now!
It's a call Craig Stingley has shouted for more than a decade. In 2012, his son Corey Stingley suffocated as 3 customers held him down in a West Dallas convenience store after he tried to shoplift $6 worth of alcohol. Prosecutors at that time chose not to charge the men with Corey's death, but Stingley kept fighting.
This is a crime against humanity.
Then Thursday, the moment he waited 13 years for.
Your Honor, we're here today, as I believe the Stingley family put to us, to restore the humanity of Corey Stingley.
67-year-old Robert Behringer and 39-year-old Jesse Cole, 2 of the men in this video, pleaded guilty to felony murder in Corey's death. The third man in Corey's case has since died.
Are you pleading guilty because you are guilty?
Yes.
The men accepted responsibility, but both parties agreed the men will serve no jail time, thanks to Marquette University's restorative justice program. Behringer and Cole met with Stingley to discuss healing before coming to court.
There's nothing that we can do to the individuals who took my son that's going to bring my son back. And in his honor, I know in my heart that we're doing the right thing.
Cole and Behringer wouldn't comment as they left court Thursday, but Cole's attorney says his client is leaving restored too.
That this is the right call for him, to not drag everyone through a big messy trial, but to try to create a dialogue with the Stingley family, which was incredibly successful.
As for Stingley,
it provides a measure of freedom.
He says he now gets to retire his old call.
What do we want? Justice!
In favor of a new refrain.
The easy thing to do would be to go after someone for doing something to you, to think that that's going to make a difference. And it doesn't. For me, this was that golden rule. This says do unto others as you would have them to do unto you.
Emily, there won't be a formal sentencing in this case.
Right, they'll do community service and make a charitable donation, and with no additional criminal charges, the convictions will be expunged after 6 months. And Stingley, he tells me that he feels like he can finally grieve his son now. They also said in court today that Corey would have celebrated his 30th birthday on March 1st.
A life gone too soon, and of course, a 13-year fight ends today. Emily Pofall, live in Milwaukee for us tonight.
Black male privilege, and didn't I say Milwaukee, most dangerous place in the universe to be classified as black. West Dallas is, basically Milwaukee, even though racially restricted region. Actually, I can give you a twofer for West Dallas. You went to Milwaukee. Yep. Give us a two for West Dallas. Do you know who lived in West Dallas? The man. The legend. Greatest thing ever connected to the city of Milwaukee. Old Jeff Dahmer. That's where his grandmother's house is, where apparently he had some bodies down in the basement there before he got his own spot on what is, I think, 25th and Kilborn. Have to go back and I got pictures of where he stayed at the apartment that has been torn down. But his grandmother, Dahmer's grandmother, lived in West, as she's classified as white. It's a racially restricted region, so she could live there. Racially restricted region, but West Alice. Anyway, context of white supremacy. Our weekly compensatory call-in. Today's date, Saturday, January 17, 2026. So I have been told. Gus T. Renegade, the worthless Negro from Virginia. The cows here for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information with non-white people, victims of racism. Not for spectators. If folks have thoughts, observations, counter-racist questions, the number 720-716-7300. The code 564943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Before I give the number again, respects, condolences, the passing of Claudette Colvin, Janelle Green Smith, and then, even though it was not this week, nearly 13 years ago, or actually nearly 14 years ago at this point, Corey Stingley, 16-year-old privileged black male. Let's see. The number again, 720-716-7300. The code 564943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. We should be here midweek, maybe even twice, before we get back for neutralizing workplace racism on Thursday. Speaking of neutralizing workplace racism, do we have any folks who've ever had a job offer rescinded? I'm not saying you did anything incorrect. In fact, you could have been perfect. Perfect resume, passed the drug test, and all of that. Didn't lie on your resume. Did everything you were supposed to, and for whatever reason, sometimes they have freezes on hiring. Sometimes the company goes bankrupt, whatever the case may be. But a job offer rescinded. Has that happened to anyone? Because we talked about that on neutralizing workplace racism, and I said then that I suspect that is probably more common than we would think, and just talked about having correct expectations, where even if you get offered a job, until you actually sign the papers, hired, this is your work area and all of that, we're not going to get too excited, because, hey, they love to, what's that tacky metaphor? Pull the rug out from underneath us. Oh, they love it. Love it, love it, love it. But yeah, do we have any folks, have you ever had a job offer rescinded? You don't have to give us the details why. Like I said, doesn't have to be you did anything, none of that. Just, for whatever reason, has that happened? Yay, nay, you can let us know. Let's see, but we should be here midweek, Tuesday, Wednesday. I will update, let folks know. There were so many wacky, I won't say wacky, there were so many very constructive books that dealt with very precise aspects of how white supremacy racism operates as a total system, and looking at very specific areas of people activity. We're reading one of those right now, black owned, talking about bookstores specifically. That's a lot, because that's like business and education and law, lots of things. But primarily, the Negroes are not supposed to be reading about racism, and we don't. But there were lots of books like that, so hopefully we'll be able to nab a number of these authors, many of them white, who had very interesting things to write about the system of white supremacy during the 2025 calendar year. But we should be here Tuesday, Wednesday, might be both. I'll post online and update for our white guests for 2026. Let's see. One thing I will add quickly, man, the chat bots, even though lots of danger, and they were just having reports about having children exposed to all of that, and I will submit you can have constructive dialogue with at least some of the chatbots about the system of white supremacy racism, and they do indeed process racist logic well, in fact. In fact, the chatbot brought up Neely Fuller Jr. first when I was speaking with it. And just, I guess, for example, let's see. One, to go broad, we spoke, I think I shared in the book club, I was talking to the chatbot about black bookstores, and that's got to be nonsense, or black reading. That's what I was talking about. Black reading is black culture, because that's in the book. And I said, I was talking to the chatbot about that. Lots of data that would say, yeah, I don't know, Brother Gus, maybe that isn't true. Let's see, we talked about the taxes. That's how I knew that report about black people being the first ones targeted. I knew that before, but I had more recent data about that because I'd spoken with the chatbot about that. White people do not care about children. I was a little more impressed there because I was able to back the chatbot down, and I got data. Oh my God. Man, he came out. One, I was impressed because when I started with that general premise, the chatbot came back. So, well, now Diddy does, was accused of all that, which, I was so mad. Like, are you serious? Ooh. After we got past that and I knuckled back down, man, I took everything that bot kicked out. Like, oh man, we got Mary Kay Letourneau and her dad and the allegations of child abuse against Mary Kay Letourneau, the rapist, Mary Kay Letourneau, the racist, and then of course the Boy Scouts and the Olympics and the Catholic Church, and same thing that, we talked about the foster care system. I just kept dumping. Jeff Epstein, like, are you, pow, pow, pow. The bot tried to say that this was some sort of anomaly. I said, no, man, this is widespread culture and the values and the system of white supremacy. We didn't even mess around. Somehow slavery got pulled into that, and the bot, yeah, you're right, they did sell a lot of Negro children. I said, don't let me get started on Sally Hemings. Said, it might be water. And then on the micro, took that same premise, even though it could have went the other way. Same thing with Breaking Bad. Reading more important than watching television. Put the same premise, that whole show, and that was even easier. White people do not care about children. But all of that to say, if you are in a situation frustrated, don't have anybody to talk to, non-white people are discourteous to me and they name call me and all of that, or you're in an area where you don't have contact with non-white people, maybe you're in Alaska, or you're overseas or someplace and you're just surrounded by race soldiers and you don't have access to non-white people, courteous or no. To a degree, you could chat it up with the chatbot, and but I would even say especially books. Oh man, that Char Adams, because a lot of times the bots, they can go and get the exact text and all of that, be very precise about it. Now there's a lot of errors, you have to double check them. It helps if you're talking about something where you're already familiar so that you can make sure they're not lying. They call it hallucinating. But man, you can talk about books, and even a book like Char Adams, you can talk in depth about white supremacy, racism, and how white people have worked to keep black people. I told you the chatbot said, man, they talk about Fahrenheit 451 and 1984 George Orwell, where you can't read or you get in trouble for reading or you can't have certain books, all that. That has been black people's entire lived experience for the past 300 years or more. That was what the chatbot said. He said, in fact, you should tell them while y'all are reading the book to think about that. White people say that could happen to white people in the future. They've been doing that to black people for hundreds of years. You ain't gonna do no reading here. You trying to read, Leroy? Can you read, Leroy? You done stole a book, Leroy? All that, even in Mr. Fuller said he would try to send his code book to victims in prison. They said, oh no, this is incendiary. He said, what do you mean incendiary? He said, you got that part in there about MACA, maximum emergency compensatory action, MECA. My apologies. You got that part in there. They come up with any old excuse like, oh no. I said the same thing with Jim Jones. They do the brain control, stealing books. Oh no, you can't read the newspaper. No reading about racism. We try to do the exact opposite here at the Cows. All we do is read about racism and think, study. Any hoodles, but we should be here Tuesday. Wednesday, I'll update to make sure. Invest if you think the Cows is constructive. Racism-notes.blogspot.com. Racism-notes.blogspot.com. PayPal button in the top right corner. Beneath the button, you'll see the links for Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, even the link for the Amazon wish list. Much obliged for all the folks who have invested, kept us on the air. Next month it'll be 17 years. Hopefully we have been worthy of your time and energy for said years, months, however long you have been listening. That said, some of the reports that we heard, already said again, condolences. Claudette Colvin passed away this week, the age of 86, which I think is kind of impressive for a victim of white supremacy and everything that she endured. I mean, hey, the life expectancy for black people is not 86 years. Fuller, Claudette Colvin, total anomalies. SMA Washington Williams, total anomalies. That is not what this is. We're not supposed to read, not supposed to have no longevity. It's supposed to be D'Angelo type thing. Chadwick Boseman, that's what it's supposed to be. Get out of here. Janelle Green Smith type thing. Out of here. Quick. One thing I think is important, people do not know about Claudette Colvin and her efforts to counter racism, the white supremacy she experienced in Alabama. That is white people's fault, number one, if you are not informed, although I will say it seems she's gotten more publicity over the past 15, 20 years. That's just my general impression. Where there's a lot more with social media and online and all the rest of it, so it's easier to share material and do interviews and all of that. But I will say a pattern I've noted when people talk about Claudette Colvin, and even I think some people who say, hey, we're what the young people say, giving her flowers. We're being, courteous and paying our respect to someone that we think highly of and want to make sure she gets attention that she rightly deserves, all well and good, but they will frame it as, that old no-count Rosa Parks. Claudette Colvin did what she did way earlier, and they just threw her to the curb and just focus on no-count Rosa Parks. Why does it have to be that we have to discount Rosa Parks to so-called elevate or at least talk about and, pay some courtesy and attention to Claudette Colvin? I mean, if you want to be truthful about it, Jesus Lord, do you know how many black people had moments of terrorism trying to get on the bus or some other form of public transportation throughout the history of white supremacy racism? I mean, are you really do you know how many? I'm not going to move. Fuller even had a story. He was talking about he got on the bus and was confused about where to sit at. And it wasn't even the driver. He said it was someone, another black person saw him, that he was confused, like we are, still learning, and told him kind of motion, Negro, you're going to get in trouble, move. And he said his heart almost jumped in his throat, like, oh, Lord, they're going to beat me down and think I'm some Rosa Parks, and I'm not even protesting. Like, I'm just confused and don't know where to sit down, which is not really funny because you could be killed for that sort of thing. But I mean, Jesus, Lord, it's countless people, and they even try and make it, they'll spin some yarn, or I wouldn't say yarn, but they'll start talking about respectability, politics, and all this because Claudette Colvin, she got pregnant at the time that all this was happening, so that would have been the visual, young pregnant black teen, and oh my God, she's promiscuous and blah, 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 and all that, which is still, racism. But I mean, there were other many other non-white people victims of racism in Alabama and beyond, where the same thing or worse happened to them on the bus, and we don't know their names either. So, and beyond all of that, Rosa Parks should not be isolated to, we know her for the bus. Like, that is a total disgrace and a whole separate act of white supremacy racism for all of the years of active, like she was, if it wasn't for the system of racism, when she did this, she was a grown woman, not 15. They're both gals in the system, but you get it. Yeah. She had been doing active attempted counter-racist work for like decades. She had worked on the Scottsboro Boys case. People don't know about that. They got books on that you can read, but that was from the 1930s. That was like 20 years before we got to, that would be the equivalent of you have a black person who they were here, they were protesting racism at Hurricane Katrina, and now we get all the way to this point, and they're talking about Corey Stingley, the treatment of the black people in Minnesota, Somalis, all that. They've been doing activist work for 20 years. And they just erase all that and boil it down to, well, Rosa, she got tired that, like, come on, man. And then for Claudette Colvin is, Rosa wasn't even the first one. Claudette Colvin did that way. I told it's a writer in Canada. He did the same thing. He said, it's a black female in Canada. She did that way before Rosa Parks. That Rosa Parks ain't nothing. Like, they sound like Cedric the Entertainer in the barbershop. Like, everybody got to get out jabbing on Rosa Parks. Like, sit down. Go read and learn something about Rosa Parks. If it's going to be a jab at anybody, it should be a white person or white people in total, not Rosa Parks. And really, what we know about Rosa Parks, you blame white people for that too. It'd be more complete, have a total, and even Rosa Parks was not about no nonviolence. Like, hey, tell the whole story about Rosa Parks if you're going to be, get an attitude about things. That's why reading is more important than watching television. And I think Claudette Colvin would sign off on that. Like, please, we can talk about me without talking bad about Claudette Colvin or really any other victim of racism. Now, let's proceed with the Claudette Colvin honors. Let's see. The Michelle King Reimer, nutritionist. I think that's so important. I pointed that out because we've had nutritionists, certified nutritionists as guests on the cows previously. Dr. Ruby Lathan, one, for starters, black female victim of white supremacy, but I thought it was so important, some of the things that she talked about. One, just because she kept saying the word confusion. That right there, and particularly for black people and food, where we brag about eating stuff like chitlins and hog mogs, and it's good luck to eat ham for Christmas and things like that. Man, you got Negro History Month coming up, so it might be good luck to eat ham and chitlins then too. I don't know whether sometimes they'll have dinners and such. They say, hey, it's Negro History Month. We got to have fried chicken and chitlins and waffles, because that's what the Negro. Anyway, Michelle King Reimer, she kept saying that word confusion. If you have people that are already confused, like me, like Neely Fuller Jr., I just said, I don't even know where to sit on the bus at. That'd be me too. When you got people that are already confused, and that's all of us, we don't know what to eat. That's why we D'Angelo, Chadwick Boseman, the evidence shows we do not know how to feed ourselves correctly. White people to blame for that too. But when you got people that are already confused about all of that, oh man, when you can give out so-called new information and make it confusing, you can really confound the most vulnerable, the most stupid and pitiful. That's us again. She said, all this talk about increased protein, I was so thankful. I said, hey, we've had certified nutritionists on the program. We talked about that. I asked Dr. Ruby Lathan specifically, are you aware you're a nutritionist? You work with people and trying to correct their diet, improve what they eat. Have you met anybody who is protein deficient? He said, oh my goodness, no way. He said, generally we get the opposite. If people eat too much protein, and generally it's poor quality. I was so thankful she talked about and said almost the exact same things. All these excuses where you got to go and I got to eat my chitlins and I got to eat my red meat. I got to eat 15 steaks and 20 chickens. That's exactly what they got at the top of the pyramid now too. Red meat, chicken. It's either a chicken or a turkey. I heard other people looked at it and said it could be either or, but whatever. Some kind of fowl. But they got the fruits and veggies. I said they got that way low, Even beans, nuts, they got that way low. What? Confusion. She said, really, all this emphasis on protein, she said the same thing Dr. Lathan said. Both certified nutritionists. They said, where is your fiber? Not all that, I got to get a protein bar and protein this and protein. Where is your fiber? You got all these people who got digestive issues, all that constipation issues, gastrointestinal cancer. I could say, because they fussed at me like D'Angelo meant something. D'Angelo is not with us because of gastrointestinal cancers. One of the dumb things that they will say for that, eat more fruits and veggies to get that fiber in. That's one of the ignorant things that they will say. Chadwick Boseman is not with us. Dr. Ruby Lathan, she came on the program right after his tragic passing at 44. And she said, ooh, Chadwick Boseman, that's lifestyle cancers. That colon cancer, that's lifestyle cancers. What do you eat? You get people that are already confused and or terrorized, and we don't get access to good food. Ooh, you can totally devastate them in the food department, and we kind of already there. We don't really need no extra come in and mess us around. No. Go in and eat more red meat. That's what you need, Leroy. We don't need none of that. They said, and encouraging now full fat dairy and red meat. You already got lots of black people that are obese, and we don't need full fat dairy. They said you don't need all that saturated fat. You get all that full fat dairy, and then you got a lot of us like Mary Kay Letourneau, and even you heard that was in Wisconsin. Eat all that cheese. They put cheese on really, when I saw the new regulations, I said, wow, President Trump, he must have hooked up all of his white dairy farmers, white cattle farmers, folks down in Texas. They are loving it. ain't no confusion. You, Brother Gus, need to shut the hell up. Damn rabbit and carrot eaters, you and Oprah Winfrey, shut the hell up. That's exactly right. Everybody needs to get a steak and a hamburger, wash it down with full glass of full fat milk. Like I thought we got the Ozempic. Shut up. You don't know what you're talking. You are not a certified nutritionist. That's what they'll say. You don't know what you're talking about. Dumb black person, be quiet. We don't want to eat what you eat. Get that burger. That's what pyramids say. Get the burger. Now, hooked up his white cattle farmers, the white cattle rancher. They have been saying for years, unless I'm ignorantly informed, they've been saying that the white dairy farmers been hurting. Like, oh my God, you got all these folk like Gus T out here that don't do the dairy no more. They don't eat all that cheese. I don't have 7 bricks of cheese that I'm waiting to nibble on as soon as the program ends. All that saturated fat again. And that cheese is addictive anyway. But I don't do all that. You can get milk and do all. You can even get cheese. I make pizza, but you can get non-dairy for all that. And they've been saying a growing population, and particularly because you got a lot of non-white people lactose intolerant anyway. We don't need to be consuming all that milk. We talked about all of this. Got books about some of that's even Nutricide. Dr. Layla Africa, formerly the worst book I ever read. That is one point that he does bring up there. You need to be drinking all that anyway. And they don't even talk about that. So you got a lot of black people. That is not healthy for you. Ice cream and all the rest of it. And I also appreciate it. Michelle King Reimer, she said you don't want to be eating all that ultra-processed food. She gave a definition and then just make it plain. White flour and everything associated with that, and then potato chips and crunchies and crackers and candy and all the rest of. And again, a lot of this, you can make it plain. Hey, eat more nuts. It's not that. I said this when they first revealed all these so-called changes. I said, hey, man, people have not changed that. She even said that. She said, people have not changed that much. Like, really, for all this switching, we got to make drastic changes. Trying not to eat at McDonald's, all this fast food. Eat whole foods. What does that mean? Cashews, nuts, almonds, not the ones that have like 8,000 pounds of sugar dumped on them and salt and all the chemicals. When you look at the ingredients, you can't even read because it's so long. Not that, just almonds. That's all it says. Cashews. That's all it says. Pecans. That's all it says. That would be whole fruits, veggies, whole grains, that would be the brown rice, not the white rice. That's what that would mean. Very simple. Not that, or I guess it is difficult because of usual suspects. You got you in the food desert and you only got a Waffle House and a KFC next to you. It might be difficult to do what I just said. And in fact, that's what they intend. And then they come and give you all this. Well, I guess, I can go get, they got the chicken now. That's right up there. I get the confusion. And then wash that down with some full fat milk. Come on, man. Study. The Fuller has that eating correctly. So we did our part. We picked a number of books. Judith Van Layson, You Are What Your Grandparents Ate. Harriet A. Washington, Mine is a Terrible Thing to Waste. We did read Nutricide, not the best, but we have done a number of, even William Duffy, Sugar Blues, did a book review of that one. We've done our part there as well, but try to learn as much as you can so you can make great choices about food. Mandatory, if you have offspring, model correct eating for them. And you can even talk about the food updates with your offspring, because maybe they'll be talking about that in school. Let's see, man, that report about the UCLA studies of the wildfires' impact on health in LA, and they said the wildfires from 2025, that event was like a biochemical stress on the body. And they listed off all the big bump in respiratory issues and heart attacks and hypertension. I flashed back. I even said, all because you got lead and arsenic in the debris, and how do people clean that out of their houses? Oh my God. I flashed back. I was in LA. I thought all of that was true before the fire. Like, how do you all breathe this every day? And it's terrible. And I get back, and I'm talking about the wildfires. And I said, man, I thought it was bad when I was there. Like, oh, my God. And I told you we had a non-white male purportedly from L.A. contact me to mock me about my concerns about this is a major health hazard. Oh, my goodness. And then if you're non-white and you live in this, you work in all of this, this idiot. Remember I told us that the chatbot, see, they mock you, they call you names, they laugh at you. You can talk to the chatbot. You can have an extensive, I know right now, if I got that chatbot, man, the health, oh my goodness, brother, look at the study right here, and oh my goodness, the health, hypertension and high blood pressure, and oh my God. Matter of fact, I saw that within days. They said, we're doing a 10-year study of the health ramifications of the wildfires. Particularly with the book that we're reading now, I'm not surprised about a response like that to mock, health concerns. We are not informed. In fact, this was a person who mocked me who said I wasn't even informed about the wildfires. I needed someone who doesn't even live in California to alert me that the wildfires were going to be a danger literally in my backyard. To live and die in LAND. But the main takeaway, non-white people, we are not informed even about extraordinary health dangers that are currently impacting us. Gus T on that list too, but we are not informed. And sometimes take great delight in not being informed. Let's see. The segment, we had back-to-back dealing with fertility. So they had the one segment, they were talking about in vitro fertilization, allowing for lots of women in their 40s, white women in their 40s to have children. They were talking to a woman who would be classified as white, Laura Terry. They didn't, that was audio, but they had pictures at NPR, so you can go and see what Laura Terry looks like. I thought it was so important within that segment. You can go look at the transcript at NPR. She said when it was about the IVF and everything, she said she wanted a donor who looked somewhat like her. I thought that was total code for someone classified as white without saying, I mean, what do you mean? You want someone the same height? What do you mean? Someone who wears glasses or doesn't wear glasses like you, someone has the same eye color, is that what you mean? No, you mean the same thing when white people go to adopt. We have a preference for white babies. When white people go online to date, they have a preference for white partners. So when you go to the donor, someone that looks somewhat like you, they should be pale too. Not too much melanin. Got it. And that has to be the case because she has 2 children that also look like they would be classified as white. She didn't want to do no random, take a chance and, we don't know. Maybe OJ donated and we don't want no juice. Let's see. They got and I cannot imagine. They talked about how most jobs do not provide that service and how they said she got fortunate, she got pregnant the first time. That's not the case. We had talked about that before. Frequently, you might have to have, 2, 3, 4 attempts before you actually get pregnant. And that is super expensive. It can be $10,000, $20,000 per attempt. Very few people that are classified as not white have a job that offers those sort of resources or even have the personal funds where they would have access to that, and much less even have a IVF facility in close proximity to where they reside. We were talking about just, do I live someplace where I can get lettuce that's not wilted, much less an IVF center. Let's see. And then we followed that. We had the segment where they were talking about the fertility issues in this part of the world and saying that they're going to have a shortage of white people. Now, they said that explicitly within the segment. Oh, wait a minute. Before I transition to that one, let me go back to Laura Terry, white woman suspected racist. That whole segment, she talked, it sounded as though she was a victim of racism. She was talking like people beat her up and shame her. Is this the Scarlet Letter? I can show off my fiction. like people throw rotten eggs at her when she walks out of it. Boo, you old IVF'er. Ooh, and hound her. Like, what? I mentioned You Are What Your Grandparents Ate. Judith Menlayson, she was a guest here. She told us, and it's in the book, she said by the year 2060, which is rapidly approaching, she said that 60% of the white people, 60% of the people in North America and Europe will be infertile males by 2060. If that is true, and she was saying all throughout the book and tying this to food and what have you, saying that you're going to have waves of people who are going to need IVF, some sort of assistance, if they're going to have children at all. This is the males and the females. Who is going to be out mocking you for IVF if more and more people, this is going to be the only way they're going to have children? Come on, I don't even mean, much less they had the audacity to say it's a form of othering. Like, what? That's the lame racist language, euphemism that, as opposed to saying white supremacy, they'll say other. They othered Leroy. I'm being othered because I got in vitro fertilization. Like, get out of here. They're treating you like a nigger. Matter of fact, in an environment, you got, I think most of the marriages, or at least a good half of them or so, they end in divorce. So how could you be hounded? Where's your daddy? That's most folks. My parents, they got divorced when I was, in kindergarten. They got divorced when I was in second grade. So, I mean, where's your dad? I don't know. He moved out of state. He ran off with the secretary. My mom can't stand it. That's white people, non-white people. That's loads of folks and has been. So how are you getting hounded just because you, I don't buy none of that. White people do a lot of that old lying and I'm a victim, feel bad for me type of a thing. And then the report where they were talking about the lack of white people, and they even pulled old Elon Musk in, South African, or maybe they're saying the same thing in South Africa. We need to increase the white birth rate, and they were saying that we need to get progressives to talk about this. I have no idea who they are speaking about. Now, some of the folks that they talked to within that report, Ruth Braunstein, I believe this is someone who'd be classified as white. She said that people who are so-called progressives, they don't speak about the fertility issues in the U.S. publicly because, the quote, it could validate more extreme ideas. That's one of those where I say consistently, talking about counter-racist media literacy, there are lots of times where white people and victims of racism will not say white supremacy racism, even though that's what they mean. And certainly in the context of a shortage of white people, white genetic annihilation, to say, I don't want to come out and talk about low fertility issues and lack of white people because it might validate racist ideas. That's what you mean. That's what Dylan Roof was talking about. That's what Peyton Gendron was talking about. That was the whole Trump campaign to the White House. We've been invaded. We got someone who wasn't even born here. We need more white people. President Trump has been explicitly complaining about that. We don't have enough white people. We don't have enough white immigrants. Why do we get the trash from Somalia? Why can't we get some of the good white Nordic people? Let's see. And they said in that segment, they said we can't get the feminists, we can't get the academics, we can't get the progressives to speak about this issue. Do you mean white people? I can't imagine. I mean, when they say feminists all the time, you white women. Academics, that certainly is not the domain of Leroy and Lakeisha. Progressives, you talking about Al Sharpton? Cory Booker? White people. You're just talking about a specific set of white people. And they even used the metaphor. They said that talking about this issue is a prickly minefield. What a metaphor. Is Tim McVeigh lurking out there waiting to talking about fertility issue? Or, hey, maybe it is. Some of those, hey, Eric Rudolph, he was bombing abortion clinics. They talked about that being some of the extreme measures. Like, we got to have all the white babies we can. We not terminate no pregnancies. Eric Rudolph, avowed white supremacist, he did bomb the Olympics in Atlanta, but he also, matter of fact, on Claudette Colvin, he bombed abortion clinics in Alabama. under the banner of white terrorism. White babies. We got to have all the white babies. Let's see. I thought the segment about Janelle Green Smith, black midwife, victim of white supremacy, they used the metaphor, another tacky one, a perfect storm. I reject that metaphor. I do not think it was a so-called perfect storm. I think it was really a planned result in the system of white supremacy. They used a lot of incorrect terms. They said weathering, and that's what happened. They are saying that that's what happened to her and talking about how hard she worked, even though that she was pregnant. I think they said that she caught 7 babies. Like, whoo, can you imagine all of that labor and all? That's such a stressful experience to go through that 7 times while you are pregnant. Even remind me, I guess, Jane Henryism. You just work yourself to death in the system of white supremacy, racism. That's what I say too when they talk about all that. You know, we are just super people. We are so strong and mighty. No. In fact, we are vulnerable for preeclampsia. In fact, we talked about that in my yoga, prenatal yoga training class. We talked about that specifically with black females and the race, even that being something to talk that you could talk about in a prenatal class. If you see like, oh, we got black females, you could talk about this, like risks for preeclampsia and things that they can do, things they can talk about with their doctor, and that they should know this information. If they don't, spend time talking about all of that. But I reject also that the term weathering, that this is what happens to people that are classified as black victims of white supremacy. No, are you talking about snow? Are you talking about rain? No, the desired result in the system of white supremacy is to have black people who are unhealthy and really even so unhealthy that they are not able to successfully produce children. That is very different from just saying, oh, that's weathering. They have, like I said, euphemisms, lots of ways of not, and I mean, this is when, hey, they did that whole segment. I'm supposed to be the one that hates black females. That's what they said. I'm supposed to be privileged, patriarchal, sexist black male. I was saying the whole time, J. Marion Sims. No. This was not no perfect storm. This was not weathering. J. Marion Sims, the father of gynecology. He experimented on people like Janelle Green Smith. This is why this happened. This is the whole history of white people and their concern, regard for pregnant, black people in general. And then I even thought medical apartheid. Reading is more important than watching television. Medical apartheid does discuss J. Marion Sims, but I thought specifically Harriet A. Washington has that extraordinary passage in that book where she says that during slavery, white people were about maximizing the birth of black children because that was property and white wealth. Immediately, once the plantation phase of slavery, white supremacy, ended and they refined to something different, it immediately switched to immediately eradicate and minimize black females' production of black babies. 180-degree shift in philosophy once Negroes are no longer property. That's why this is not no perfect storm. This is the exact desired intent. I was reminded we had Dorothy Roberts, the University of Washington had Dorothy Roberts like 2 years ago on campus, right at the beginning of the year about this time. And they had a big panel to celebrate killing the black body and her other research. In fact, I even remember a non-reading moment. I remember there was a young lady present and she was so excited, like, get to hear Dorothy Roberts, blah, blah, blah. And another victim was present and she said, oh yeah, have you read any of her material? Like, I'm excited to see her too. And she said, read her material? What? Ooh. I don't do no reading. You must have gotten me, but that I am a college student. I'm enrolled. I'm gonna get my degree, and I don't sit around and do no. I'm sorry. Anyway, but they had the big panel on Dorothy Roberts. And they were talking about celebrating her books that we don't read, and it was titled "A Broken System." And I do remember that point was brought up explicitly in the talk, where one of the victims on the panel, because it's about 5 people in addition to Dorothy Roberts, and they said that it is not broken. This system is working exactly as it was intended. D'Angelo dies at 50. Chadwick Boseman dies at 44. Janelle Green Smith, they said 31. That is exactly as intended. That is not a perfect storm. We didn't intend for you thought you were supposed to be Strom Thurmond, live to be 101, have 70 years of midwifery experience to pass up. No. That's not the intent. Let's see. They had the segment in Albuquerque where the young lady, high school student, she went out after school and they had written Negro on the ground and vandalized her vehicle. I was stunned because the parents said this had happened before. Wait a minute. You mean another black student went out to their vehicle, it had been vandalized, and Negro was like, is this like a monthly occurrence, every other month? Like, what in the world? Do they not have cigarettes? I know, hey, some schools are smaller and they've been cutting resources on all the rest of it, but man, I know many schools right here in Seattle, most of the schools, they have cameras, especially like the parking area, all that, the student area, all that, they have cameras. Some of them, they even have security that is on the premises, especially after hours. They can kind of drive through, make sure nobody is loitering, trespassing, coming to vandalize the place, anything like that. These sort of incidents happen on a regular basis. Sometimes it seems like it might be during school. I know during school, the vast majority of school now, because of Reb, Columbine, you got resource officers. If it's something during school, like how is this happening all the time? And Lord work in mysterious ways in 2026. Come on. Even the lame excuse, they say, we were investigating, we checking on it, we looking into things, but we had white Jesus's birthday and everybody had to go home and do the gifts and do the eggnog. And then we had New Year's, we had to come back, but we working, we gonna get in on it. Come on. Like, I do not, man, I think some people would have been working over, they would have got vacation pay. If they were really serious. This is an incident of terrorism. And we got repeat offenders, was it a gang? Like, what? Come on. Let's see. They had the segment, quickly, Judge Kathleen Ryan, white woman. I thought that's so important. White men, patriarch. This is a Judge Kathleen Ryan. They're the product of affirmative action right there. She says she's a new racist. And in the report, one of the folks who turned her in said that she enjoyed hurting people and bragging about it. I said, wow, that right there. Fuller and myself have talked about white people brag about practicing racism. That's why Ben Tillman, statue still up. Strom Thurmond, just like Mary Kay, rapist, racist, lived 101 years, but his statue is still up. White people aren't ignorant about any of this. His statue is still up. They brag about practicing racism. Fuller called it the royalist concept. They love to embarrass, humiliate people, splash mud on folks, ride by and laugh about it. That was Judge Kathleen Ryan. And the judge, they get to sit on high, look down on everybody and pass judgment. She's in South Carolina. That's all they do is lock up Negro males. In South, non-Clemson dad, 40 years, boom, scaring a white woman, 40 years, boom. Leroy, 25 years, boom. That's all they do, lock up black dudes in South Carolina. She's a probate judge too. Like, man, come on. When they were talking about President Trump saying he's the captain and all his racism against the Somalis, I guess they're pretend black people come over here and loot the child care fund. It was described as a dark comedy by Mekki Elam Grabi, I believe this is a non-white male. He was being interviewed on First Post. When you say dark comedy, do you mean racist joke? That's another one, like extremists. They have lots of ways of avoiding racism, white supremacy. It seems like that's what you're talking about, but not saying it. Especially dark comedy. I do not think, especially if a white person is the one making the joke, white comedy, racist joke. Let's be more direct and precise with our terms. And specifically, Mr. Meki El Mograbi, I'm ignorant, this victim of racism, and he looks definitely could not be accepted as white. He was asked, do you think the rhetoric that President Trump is using about these Somalis and Representative Ilmar Ohan, messing up name, my apologies, is it racist? He did not answer that question at all. He moved right around that, like you could just say no, I don't think it's racist. I do think it's racist. Well, we don't need to add to things being inflamed. Wait a minute. I've been told the beginning of knowledge starts by calling things by their proper name. I don't think we're going to make any sincere progress if racism is being practiced, but we don't want to call it that. If we got a house fire, how are we going to put out the fire? Well, we got a fire, but we don't want to call it a fire. Might upset people. Like, what? Come on, any other emergency, call it what it is. If this is racist, call it that. Last thing I'll get in. The death of Corey Stingley. I was so stunned about seeing that this week. I had talked about that case years ago. In fact, I remember that was a case I began using when I started pushing back more forcefully, when people would say, black male privilege, anytime a black person gets killed, it becomes major news. Everyone hears about it. They get T-shirts and they get all this attention. But then if something happens to Janelle Green Smith, nobody says a word. It doesn't get any attention, and it's just not important. I said, well, wait a minute. Once I started pushing back on that and saying, did anybody hear about Corey Stingley? Every time I asked, the answer was no. Now, I was late hearing about this, but I mean, hey, it took 14 years for them to make an arrest, or nearly 14 years for them to actually get arrest and conviction in this case. So I had a long time to catch up. But a black male in, again, West Allis, Jeff Dahmer's former stomping grounds, I thought it was $13. They said he was accused of stealing $6 worth of alcohol. I will say pitifully, sobriety would be best. I will also add, I am disgusted that I did not know this case happened basically in Milwaukee, West Allis, but Milwaukee. Had I known that, I would have, maybe I could have talked to Mr. Stingley. I would have definitely tried to gather as much material about this case while I was there directly, even talk to other people about this case while I was there. But I just didn't. Wow, this is Milwaukee too, most dangerous place ever. But while I was there, I watched a whole documentary about underage drinking for black people, specifically in Milwaukee, and how easy it is and they had black children that were his age and some younger, and they just took them around Milwaukee, and they would go to convenience stores like that, and they were able to buy alcohol. And even I talked about it at the Sade Robinson murder trial last spring. They talked to her convicted racist killer, and they had bar owners there who had served Sade Robinson when she was underage also. But they said that Sade Robinson's killer, he had been coming to their establishment for 20 years. I told you all, I was immediately, my brain shut down like, whoa, wait a minute. I needed a recess. Like, This dude is 34. If he has been coming to the bar for 20 years, that means he's been coming here since he's 14. Like, what? And I remember I looked around the courtroom like, is anybody else like, what? Wait a minute. Like, that should be some more questions. What do you mean he's been coming since he was 14? Like, what? And, you know, apparently in Wisconsin, this is a very common thing. And even I published that report. I upset Miss Scarborough, unfortunately, lame that I am. And what the catalyst was, I shared an article, tagged her, that was from Wisconsin Public Radio and a local Wisconsin Milwaukee newspaper. And it was about the astronomically high number of alcohol-related deaths that they have in Wisconsin. I thought that was so important. That was my conclusion when I was there as well, because I said, man, all they really got that I see here is cheese and alcohol. It's just drinking all the time. That's carcinogenic. More than one drink a week, heading towards cancer. And I remember sharing that, and I said, I think of Sade Robinson's death as an alcohol-related death, underage. She's only 19. She hadn't been lured to those bars. Maybe none of this happens. But that's just me. That's how I process it. But Corey Stingley, that would be an alcohol-related death too. That would be a whole lot of things. But ostensibly, if he is not accused of pilfering $6 worth of alcohol, maybe this doesn't happen. Anyway, from a case that no one heard about, I also think it is significant. Corey Stingley, in addition to no one being convicted, held accountable for a 16-year-old being killed on the spot, it took more than a decade. But beyond all that, the 3 white men who killed Corey Stingley for, I don't even know, what, $6 worth of alcohol, that's like one beer? I don't even, can you get a bottle of Mad Dog 2020 for $6? These 3 white dudes who killed this 16-year-old black child, that not only were they not enforcement officers, rent-a-cops, they weren't even employed at the store. These were just random, what we say, race soldier without a badge. Whoa. Wait a minute, Corey. You don't steal that Mad Dog. Come here. And strangled him to death on the spot. 3. I can't even. You are a 16-year-old child, and you get snatched by 3 grown white men. Not 1, 3. And they choke you to death. Black male pen. And I said then, like, wow, everyone I asked, nobody heard about this case? Nope. And I do realize Milwaukee is not New York City or Los Angeles. I get it, but dang, and I said this for a while. A black child is suffocated by 3 white men in public. I think this was on camera. Y'all don't even know about this case. It took me years to catch up. I didn't know about this case. But black males get all the attention? I don't even remember them mentioning his name when the Republican National Convention was there. There was no, don't forget about Corey Stingley. Nobody was charged. I don't remember none of that. I remember they killed a different black dude, so maybe, our attention just got shifted. A lot of black male privilege. But Corey Stingley, and they don't even do no time. Community service. That's what you get for killing a black child. You get community service. No time served. And it's expunged from their record. I think if you get a speeding ticket, they don't expunge it from your record. You might have to do some extra work to do all that. Let some time go. 6 months. If you get a speeding ticket, do they expunge it from your record in 6 months? That's some black male privilege. Woo! If we prosecute somebody for killing you, if after you done stole your Thunderbird, you go pick up trash off the side of the road for a few weeks and we'll call it square. Black male privilege. The last thing I'll get in, that segment with Benicia Sherrard, non-white female, she has a court case pending. She's the victim where they called her a Negra and all the rest at the Mac and Frankie's bar on December 31st, so-called New Year's Eve. I will just say again, same thing that I said here while we were broadcasting on New Year's Eve. Oscar Grant. I said then, probably would be bad. Now, what have I said for years? One of the worst combinations in the known universe. Alcohol, white people. It should not be a surprise something like this happens at a bar. Sobriety would be best. That's why I say if you gotta go to the bar, it's really gotta be now. If anything happens, hey, poo on me. I should have made better choices to begin with. And we gotta be alert, which is a problem because you're drinking, so you're not really paying attention. But anything happens. It looks like somebody giving us a side eye. We done heard a racist joke. They flash O.J. Simpson on the screen. Anything. We are out of here. If you're by yourself, that might be mistake number one. I am out of here. It cannot be. Hey, what are you doing? You don't say that. Because they were playing some of the. Once it has gotten to nigger, and Fuller said that. Once you hear a white person, nigger, run. You live. We've done whole programs. Your life can be ruined in 5 minutes. And that could be Corey Stingley. You could be strangled to death. Because that wasn't no 15, 30-minute affair for Corey Stingley to be killed. Same thing with Oscar Grant. That wasn't no 5-hour build-up to, oh, no. It can happen super quick. Once you hear Negra, even if they're not talking to you, it is time to go. And really at that point, that's where you should be saying, poo on me. I knew this sort of thing could happen here. I'm out of here. And we've heard lots of those cases where we do the exact opposite. We, non-white people, we do the exact. They killed a black dude at a bar where something similar like that happened. He was at a bar, and a white person, Negro, what? You don't call Leroy no Negro? Step outside. And the white person had a weapon and ended up stabbing him to death and killing him. That's another one. It wasn't no 5-hour buildup. All this 5 seconds. Uh-oh, we got a casualty. Soon as you hear anything that sounds like, uh-oh, danger, it is time to go. I would say, even if you are armed, it is time to go. The goal is not, I was able to use my firearm and I got it. The goal is always, I want to have a day where my firearm is not needed. That is the goal. I don't even want to be nowhere where I feel like I might have to use my firearm. Like, whoa, we got to get out of here. Like, why did we even come here? Excellent question. We do not understand racism, white supremacy, and really, same thing. We do not understand what it means to be white. Stay out of the bar. That could be Gus T tonight. They got old Seattle Seahawks playing in the playoffs. I could be out at the tavern, think I'm going to be one of the 12s, cheer on the team, and they mess around and we lose and they get mad. Say I look like one of the players on the 49ers. It's my fault. They done lost again. And I would say the same thing. That was my fault. I done got intoxicated in some white ball games and lost my brain computer. You know you're not supposed to be. You're not one of the 12s. You're a Negro. You're a victim of racism. Even if they win, that might be the celebration. We go out and roast a Negro. Same thing. My fault. What was I there? Why were you here? Excellent question. The number again, 720-716-7300. The code 564-943#. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. I'll give folks like 5 minutes, see if they have a thought. Has anybody had a job rescinded? Just like I said, I know that is not, you don't have to give us the details, none of that. You can email untiljustice@gmail.com. I just have the suspicion that that is not irregular, I'll say, when it comes to victims of racism. That would be my sneaking suspicion, that it might be more common than we think. And where the non-white person did not do anything incorrect. They weren't being shiftless. Like I said, they didn't lie on their resume. They didn't have bad references. Everything was, perfect and as it should be in terms of what they did to acquire the job. Just for whatever reason, white people changed their mind and took back what had been offered. Has that happened to anyone? Let us know. Like I said, you can drop an email. We'll revisit on the coming Neutralizing Workplace Racism this coming Thursday. But let us know if you've had a job offer rescinded or have any other thoughts via news segments, what has transpired over the last 7 days. Star 61. Folks have thoughts, observations. Like I said, we'll give folks like 5 minutes if they have thoughts, observations to share. Again, we should be here like midweek, Tuesday, Wednesday. I'll give an update via social media about what specific times and all that. Make sure it is actually Tuesday, not Wednesday, vice versa. And might even have double whammy with Tuesday and Wednesday, but I'll update via social media as soon as I confirm with our white guests. And then if folks have not tuned in, Black Owned, we've only read like 3 chapters. I think we've read like 3 chapters in the text. We've only done 2 sessions. Wow. I don't know if it's top 10 worthy yet. We have to read a lot more. I'll maybe make an assessment after we've read at least half of the book or so. But wow, just the first 3-4 chapters of the text, again, to get detailed information, the amount of time and energy that white people have invested and over centuries to see to it that black people specifically do not read about racism. And even to see that specifically, not just that we're not reading about racism, that, hey, we might even be more flexible, white people, with if they want to read nonsense. Long as it's not, we don't give them no ISIS papers now. Whoa. Medical apartheid. All the nonsense that they want to read, give them that. Give them plenty of it and make sure that it doesn't run out. But they're not supposed to be reading and thinking about studying racism. Have a quiet spot where they can go sit and study racism. That is not supposed to be, and how white people have fought against that for centuries. It is a man, and even the direct assault against black bookstores, what the whole core of the book is about. But, and again, a lot of that was these bookstores are selling books about racism. They are a threat, and we gotta eradicate them. To have so many of, like I said, man, to read more of this book and to see what the chatbot had said before we even started, that Fahrenheit 451, 1984, George Orwell. This has already been the lived experience for black people. And for many, many years, to see that in the book, what the bot was talking about, where black bookstores, the fire department comes and floods the black bookstore. The FBI puts the black books. I didn't even, all the time that we've talked about COINTELPRO, we've had guests come on the program, talk about COINTELPRO, their attacks on black people, history of the FBI, all of that. We've done that for years. I've never heard anyone talk in detail about, oh, this also included black bookstores, and then going through long record of evidence of all the black bookstores across the country that were attacked in the different ways that they were attacked, some of them same time period, and so, like, wow. That's why I said, and the fact that a lot of the stores that are mentioned, if they didn't close down, they had Dr. Welsing's book, they had Mr. Fuller's book, they had Fuller and or Welsing in to, give a lecture, talk about their book at some time. Like, man, it would have been amazing to have them read this book, especially the whole thing, really, but especially Dr. Welsing, because she talks so much about reading. Fuller too, but particularly Dr. Welsing, but then to flip the parts that we have not got to kind of the 80s and 90s, where you have some of the more recent bookstores where that would have kind of been their era, where they're coming through and talking about system of racism, and Mr. Fuller talking about his book. By the time you get to the 90s, Dr. Welsing talking about her book, and even before that, because she had been on Donahue and published essays, the whole thing at Howard and everything. Man, to hear them, just to hear what they, their remembrances of talking in some of these spots and seeing some of these locations come into existence, and the difficulty that they had to even trying to stock their book. Man, missed out, but black owned. And I said you should get this book. Like, wow, this is a book. If you are serious about replacing white supremacy with justice, that's what the whole book is about. The history of black people trying to write about racism, the history of black people trying to sell books about racism, the history of black people trying to acquire books about racism, and the history of white people mostly successfully squashing all of that. That's what the book is about. It is fascinating. COINTELPRO. It is fascinating. You should own a copy. This is one of those. In fact, I think if you have offspring, it might be a little bit older. Like, certainly not if you have like a 10-year-old. If they're 14. Maybe you have this for later. You can read it for you, but I would think if they are 17, 18, maybe if you have anyone, if they just started college, this would be a great book. Maybe even inspire them to check out some other books, because it talks about so many different time periods and what have you. If they already are into reading, they will love this book. Just saying. And I think any person who is classified as black who has heard Dr. Welsing and all of the times that she said reading is more important than watching television. If you read this book, where Howard is mentioned, we already talked about Howard prominently in D.C., oh man, you will have a massive appreciation for this text, so much about the system of white supremacy, and really the value that white people have placed on reading for years. The value, and really, apparently, it must make the same. I played that report weeks ago. They said white people around the world are saying it is a national security threat that people are not reading. If that is true, I just take that and apply in the system of white supremacy racism. It must be substantially less threatening for non-white people, victims of racism, to not read, and especially to not read about racism. That must make us much easier to control. Something about reading seriously about racism, studying, thinking, discussing the concepts and ideas that you read, something about that process must be constructive towards solving this problem, producing justice. That's why white people have labored so tirelessly for years and successfully. We don't read. I would even say, hey, some of the little things that they talked about, you don't have to go grab the biggest book. That's what I've said. They do have audiobooks, although I do think there should be some like actual page flipping. If that's electronic, you get a Kindle, whatever, actual hard copy where you got a physical book in your hands. I do think there should be some actual, your eyeballs are actually on these words as you go through the paragraphs and pages. But you don't have to get the biggest book. They have articles where if you don't have a habit, hey, racists have been successful. If you have not developed a habit for reading, no problem. They have smaller books. You can even get articles. You could go old school and just pull up the newspaper. Snag, read 1 or 2 articles just to get yourself in habit of making time to read on a regular basis. Then you can build up, get a few books. I don't think Black Owned is the biggest book. Like it's not, 1,000-page book. I don't think. And just, I'm going to carve out 5 minutes. I'm going to carve out 10 minutes. Hey, you can, for starters, you could just mute and or pause the TV watching. I'm just going to carve out my 10 minutes of counter-racist reading and make that, you could do 10 minutes a day. And then after same thing like with any other exercise, working that muscle, it will get stronger. Your reading muscles will get stronger. You stick with 10 minutes for a while, you might be able to build up, and next you can do 15 minutes. Then you can do 20 minutes. Like, oh, okay. It's not like you have to read for an hour, just getting into a habit of making time to read on a regular basis. And then you can work, if you start reading maybe some articles or what have you, you can get longer articles. Get a book, read, 10, 15 minutes a day. Hey, it takes a month to get through it. No big deal. It's not a race. Get the next one. Maybe it took me a month last time. Maybe I'll get through this one in 3 weeks. Participate in the Catherine Massey Book Club. We go every Friday. We're not reading every day, and we have the audio book, even though I encourage folks to get the actual book so you can follow along. It'll make more sense. You can highlight, be more coherent with your understanding of the work. But tune into the book club. You'll have a group to read it with, so it might be a little bit more inspiring to keep up. And especially if you have offspring, invest that time building your counter-racist library. We talked about that in the book club. Some of the Black entrepreneurs, bookstore owners, talked about the importance of children's books and them stocking children's books and all the rest of it, even publishing children's books in some cases. Invest that time before the child is born, and then make sure your child sees you reading about racism, not reading 50 Shades of Grey, reading nonfiction about racism, and on a regular basis. Not, oh man, I think, back Obeezy was in office, and I think I remember Mom had that book out that one time then. I think, not like on a regular basis. And reading together with your child so that you all can discuss. Really, I would say a book like Black Owned, especially if you live in a region where any of the black bookstores, if there's like a black bookstore where you live, this would be a great book to read with your offspring. You can listen to the audiobook together at the cows, or on your own. You could listen to it, talk about it, go to the black bookstore. Maybe they could ask questions and look around. But, oh man, that would be a great, there are tons of them, but make that a regular experience with your child. Even if there's no audiobook, you all could take turns and just pass the book around and take turns reading out loud to each other. Pause, ask questions, look up vocabulary words, like really have fun, learning, making it a so-called family experience to learn about and study, think about racism together. What an idea. Any hoodles. That's it. We will be here on, I will update at Until Justice via Elon Musk's former Twitter. You can check other social media outlets as well, and I will post so that people will know if it's Tuesday, Wednesday, as it might be both. I'll post that as well if it is. But we should have white guests on talking about some of what I think very informative literature published very recently at Black owned. Like, I really did not know this book just came out within the past few weeks or so. And I will say that if you want a comparison, if folks remember the second worst book I've ever read, Cased, Isabel Wilkerson, really about racism, the problem is so bad and we're in such a pitiful position. Really, even if you read a bad book about racism, you will learn something. Isabel Wilkerson, Cased, that had such a massive push. Now, she did write for the New York Times, so maybe they look out for their own, but it was way beyond just the New York Times talking about that book. It was widespread, all types of media platforms and mainstream white-dominated publications. Just, oh my goodness, Isabel Wilkerson, Case, this is the best book ever, and everybody has to read this, and this is the best book to be published in 50 years, and blah blah blah. Black owned, also written by a black female like Isabel Wilkerson. I have not seen any of that sort of hoopla and shit. Like, they had whole reports on NPR right when Cased was published. I have not seen any of that for black owned. Like, I have not seen just article after article and people talking about it, and for a book this important to talk about the specific documented history of white people not wanting black people to read about racism, and then deliberate attacks and sabotage of black bookstores. Why isn't that like, oh my goodness, like, I don't want to hear no Chris Rock ever again about black people don't read, white people don't want us to read. Why isn't that front and center? Oh, white people can, hey, that is what domination looks like. You can promote, hype, and the hate you give, same thing. Oh my God, everyone talked about that, but then you had to read it in schools, and oh my goodness, this is the most important book, new American classic, and give it all the awards and high reviews, turn it into a movie, which is the same thing they did with Case. I'm not even saying that they got to turn black owned into a movie, but dang. Char Adams, she's a celebrated journalist too, just like Isabel Wilkerson. Why didn't they have the same sort of fanfare and publicity for this book? Maybe white people don't want us to know reading is more important than watching television. Doing our part, Catherine Massey Book Club, well over a decade. Doing our part. And we have read, almost every book we've read has been directly about racism. Doing our part, man. And we read The Hate U Give too. That's it. We'll be here on Tuesday, I believe. Just have to confirm to make sure. If not Tuesday, then we should be here on Wednesday. For Corey Stingley, who might not have even stole alcohol. He was accused. Who even knows? For Corey Stingley, sobriety would be best. That's another one. Model for your children. And if you have teens, I would make sure, show them Corey Stingley. You would think, yeah, you can be young. And yeah, I thought you have a lot of instances where you might have a child whose brain is still developing. They're not mature, where they make dumb decisions, and they might snatch a piece of chewing gum or a piece of candy or a bag of onions or whatever, the Mad Dog 2020, and run out of a store. What I did not think that was like a death sentence on the spot. I've seen, real talk, I have seen where grizzly bears have ran into a store and nabbed 4 or 5 items. They didn't even shoot and kill the grizzly bear on the spot. Anyway, if I had offspring, I would make sure that they I saw it. That might be another one. Let's research Corey Stingley. What happened? 13 years. What did his father endure and all the rest of it? Have that something that they think about as a young offspring, brain still developing. Oh, yeah, I need to make good decisions. Oh, and that drinking thing, like, oh, yeah, I thought Dad was kind of lame. He's talking about that sobriety thing. Oh, yeah. It does seem like this liquor thing pops up frequently when black people are being terrorized. Maybe he might be on. I thought he was stupid, but he might be on to something. That liquor, man, maybe Corey might not have taken nothing, but if he did, if he doesn't want that alcohol, Corey Stingley might be with it. White people most to blame. I'm not a victim. I'm just saying. System of white supremacy. You can be white and steal alcohol. It'll just be a prank. Corey Stingley, it's not going to be no prank. You'll get strangled by 3 white strangers who are not police and are not employed by the store. Sobriety would be best, and they won't even remember your name, because Corey Stingley, maybe for a day or two in Milwaukee. I wish I had investigated, but I didn't know this was in Milwaukee. I did know about Corey Stingley when I went, though, but for the most part, they won't even remember your name. You won't get no hashtags, T-shirts, protest marches, balloons, nothing. Corey who? What was it? What? Corey Maggette? You talking about? What? Because that's what I got every time I ask. Nobody knew about Corey Stingley. Nobody. I'm curious if I'd asked. I hope if I'd asked in Milwaukee, it would have been different, but woo! Black male privilege. I will ask if it's not asking too much, you can pray for Gus T. I told you when the Seahawks are in the playoffs, they shoot the guns and the cannons all the time. Man, you have to be real careful. White people, because Washington State is gun country. You have to be real careful. I said that when Seattle won the Super Bowl. I was here then. We were broadcasting. I said, oh, my Lord, they got the guns and bang, bang. That's how they celebrate. I said they could have lynched a Negro to celebrate. I said, oh, my Lord, you have to pray for Gus T because it might be dangerous. Pray for Gus T long as the Seahawks are in the playoffs. Bang, bang. Sobriety would be best, or I guess especially if you can go to the bar to watch the playoffs and the football. Jesus Christ. Woo, they got the folks gambling, and if their team don't win, or even if the team does win, they don't get the right prop bet, and they get mad, and I didn't have too much Mad Dog. It can be dangerous. You do not want to be at the bar. Sobriety would be best. Creator, remind us, stop saying, not all white people are racist. Remind us, stop name-calling people classified as black. Make sure we remember and appreciate the losses of Claudette Colvin, Janelle Green Smith, Corey Stingley. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Thanks all for tuning in. C.O.W.S signing out.
Nigga, you so brainwashed.
I'm a victim, brother.
Problem. You're a victim.
I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning.
Shut up.
The man has programmed my conditioning. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.